League of Legends, The Lord of the Thousand Year War. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101, The Restless Radman. What's the situation? Margaret asked the Black Rose Mage outside the mine cave of the Silver Mountain Range. It is certain that the group of rats are using some kind of efficient digging tools to dig the soil and rocks. The female mage looked a little tired, and her eyes glowed blue under the reflection of the magic light. Can you confirm whether they have other digging sites besides the mine entrance? No, the monitoring guards can only sense the situation nearby. For this group of rats, it is very likely that they will dig into multiple places at the same time, so as to launch attacks more conveniently. Hearing the conclusion drawn by the female mage, Margaret's face was very ugly. If this group of terrible rats were allowed to run out from other places, where there were no soldiers guarding, the consequences would be disastrous. Although the mountain body of the Silver Mountain Range is stable and the stone walls are hard, the performance of the magic steel equipment can show how terrible these red metals are. No matter how hard the stone is, it cannot resist the collision of mountain copper. The longer the time is delayed, the worse the situation will be. If the rats really dig through the mountain body and go to the Emerald Territory in groups from other places to wreak havoc, then the Emerald Territory will be finished. With the Shadow Crossbowmen maintaining law and order and defending the Emerald Territory, the Black Iron Guards can only be responsible here. Take the initiative to meet the enemy and prevent the rats from digging further. Responsible is responsible. There are only more than 200 people on their side. How to reduce casualties has become the most critical issue. After thinking for a moment, Margaret issued an order. 3 magic steel shieldmen will block the entrance of the cave in a triangular shape, forming 3 arc-shaped shield walls to block the crossbow arrows and attacks of the rats. 2 black guards will guard each wing, and the sword and shieldmen will cover and intersperse between the shields. The rest of the Black Iron Guard spearmen will hold their guns behind the shields and swords and shieldmen, and use the gun formation to block the enemy. Ms. Meredith, you will command the mages. The mages who know powerful magic attacks will prepare spell attacks. The rest of the mages will remove the rock blocking the entrance of the cave and provide assistance and lighting. Orders were issued one by one, and the army was a little confused for a while. Many people did not understand what they meant. This made Margaret frown and personally guide the soldiers to make layouts and positions. After this stabilization, I have to discuss with Lord Lester about further reforms to the military system. Abandoning the original barbarian military system of squadrons and centurions, the army construction of the Emerald Territory has taken its own unique path and has simply changed to squad leaders. 5 people with different divisions of labor as a minimum primitive unit, squadron leaders, leading and commanding 5 squadrons, and battalion leaders, leading and commanding 4 squadron leaders, a total of 100 people. In Lester's words, without a matching military guiding ideology and cultural construction, such an army cannot be considered a complete army, and it is inevitable to encounter various problems in command. Just thinking that Lester has not returned yet, Margaret is a little confused again. Lord Margaret, everything is ready. Seeing that Margaret, the leader of the Black Iron Guard, was a little absent-minded, the squadron leader Alice reminded her in a low voice. Yeah. Coming back to her senses, Margaret glanced at the girl who reminded her, and also let go of the emotions that had nothing to do with the battle. The wizard begins to cast spells to remove the rocks. Everyone, prepare for battle. Putting down the mask of the Black Iron Guard and holding the magic steel sword, the girl's cold voice added a bit of oppressive dullness. Black Guard, listen to my command at any time. Waving the red shovel, with the sound of crackling, Gilligilly chiseled the thick rock wall bit by bit. Gilligilly turned his head to look at his noisy companion. His eyes were red, his heartbeat accelerated, and he had the urge to use the red shovel to dig off his companion's head. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The majestic voice of the elder came from behind. Gilligilly was a little afraid, turned his head, and continued to cooperate with the red hoe to dig. Gilligilly, who was busy working, didn't know when he was called Gilligilly. Gilligilly only knew that he was born red, and he followed his instinct to eat many thin companions and enemies. Finally, he grew up slowly in the darkness and drank the holy blood to get the opportunity to become stronger. Unfortunately, he was not chosen by the elders to join the glorious rat army. Squeak, the slave rat next to him asked, but Gilligilly didn't bother to pay attention. Even though Gilligilly was also a slave rat, Gilligilly still looked down on slave rats. Gilligilly wanted to use the red shovel in his hand to shovel off everyone's head and devour everyone's body and heart. As long as he dug through the thick wall, everyone would appear in front of Gilligilly. By eating everyone, Gilligilly would become stronger and might join the rat army and become a rat warrior. Squeak, squeak. A rat warrior holding a red knife came from behind in a show of force. Gilligilly recognized it. It was Gigi, a rat warrior who personally cut off the head of the ant general. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Gigi patted Gilligilly's shoulder and went to other places with the red knife. Gigi and Gilligilly are good friends. Gigi talked to Gilligilly and Gilligilly worked harder. Gilligilly wanted to fight side by side with the brave big Gigi and kill everyone, so he picked up the red knife. The next moment, the rock melted into magic element. Gilligilly's red shovel had no force point, and Gilligilly fell out directly and turned over twice. Squeak. Gilligilly squinted his eyes to avoid sunlight. Why did the wall disappear? Margaret chopped it down with a knife, and the huge rat head rolled several times. The red shovel fell to the ground, and the squinting rat eyes were full of confusion. Looking at the dazed rat, Margaret said coldly, "Magic attack." First, a lingering ball of shining light flew into the dark mine, followed by several groups of elemental magic that followed and hit the red-skinned demon rat. Meredith just squinted his eyes and observed the mine and did not launch the attack like last time. If he let the rat out to fight, the bone-eating flame would cause more damage to himself. Hit by the sudden magic, more than a dozen digging rats died on the spot, and the slave rats responsible for digging were in chaos and fled in all directions. Squeaky, squeaky. The sharp voice of the rat elders echoed in the mine. The rat warriors held the mountain copper-long knives and stabbed them into the chests of the fleeing slave rats. Fear successfully restrained the fleeing slave rats. Gigi howled like crazy, waving the mountain copper-long knife, and rushed towards Renren, who killed his friend. Seeing the brave Gigi take the initiative to attack, the other rat warriors also rushed up. Seeing that the warriors had fallen into a state of madness, the elder wearing a human skin coat and holding a skull cane let out a long roar, and the ratman crossbowman raised his crossbow and followed. Squeaky, squeaky, we need more warriors. In the darkness, the ratman priest bowed his head respectfully. Squeaky? Do you need me to summon the rest of the ratman warriors? Squeaky, 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 go, summon General Dong Dong in the clan, and don't stop the rest of the excavation work. We need more atolls to eliminate humans. The monthly ticket statistics for December are 398, with a total of 7 updates. Thank you for your support. Thanks to Young Old Man Going Crazy, Sketch Rose, Staying Up Late, but Not Wanting to Stay Up Late, Altolia Pendragon, The Legendary Shenning, and At Dawn, for their award coins. Special thanks to, the name is too long and there will be a reading it, the first cheese in this book. By the way, every time I read this classmate's name, I always feel like someone is scolding me. What's going on? Chapter 102, A Solitary Advance. The rat warriors charged ahead, screaming and rushing out of the mines. The rat crossbowmen followed behind, aiming at the tall black iron guards and shooting arrows. Most of the arrows were blocked by the square magic steel shields. Only a few unlucky ones were pierced by crossbow arrows through their limbs without shields. They screamed and were quickly pulled away by their companions and retreated to the back. Alice guarded Margaret, who was retreating to her side, and pierced the rat swordsman wielding a simple mountain copper steel knife with a gun. Crossbowman, attack the rats holding jars first. Margaret, who was retreating and fighting, saw the jar throwers following the rat warriors, and her eyes could not help but condense. She still remembered the horror of the corrosive acid in the jars. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Before the two ratmen magic potion throwers could throw the pots in their hands, they were pierced by the crossbow arrows. The pots fell to the ground with a clack sound, and the dark green corrosive acid splashed, directly melting the potion throwers into white bones. The other charging rat men also screamed and bypassed the highly toxic acid to change their routes to the sides. Looking at the miserable death of the rats in the pots with lingering fear, the crossbowmen and soldiers could not help but raise their full vigilance to the rats in the pots. The battle instantly entered a white-hot state. Under the protection of the big shield, the spearmen of the Black Iron Guards used the advantages of long weapons to efficiently kill the short-armed rat men warriors. The magic steel crossbow arrows of the rat men crossbowmen also lost their powerful deterrence to the soldiers under the obstruction of the magic steel big shield. Margaret carefully observed the battlefield environment and breathed a sigh of relief. Squeak, squeak, squeak. With a piercing cry, a large group of rats, which were obviously shriveled and the ratman warriors, rushed out carrying simple dark wooden shields, hiding potion throwers in the process, trying to disrupt the formation of the Black Iron Guards. 7 or 8 jars were thrown high and smashed at the big shield. The soldiers who were carrying the big shields with their eyes closed suppressed their fear and tried their best not to imagine themselves turning into bones. Magic shield. The magician's spell support arrived in time, and a light blue light shield blocked the big shield and cracked the jar, blocking the corrosive acid with white smoke. The soldier who survived the disaster opened his eyes and looked at the venom less than 2 meters away from him, and his heart beat violently. Seeing that the wooden shield rats began to retreat, and realizing that the jar throwers had disappeared, Margaret issued an order. Darkson Blackguard, follow me. Margaret put down her horned helmet and visor again, and rushed into the battlefield like a cold killing machine. The 4 heavy armored infantrymen who had been ready for battle marched through the crowd with heavy steps, and began to charge from the flank, destroying and tearing everything along the way. As a standard anti-infantry elite unit, the Black Guard truly became a life reaper, combining excellent warriors selected from 100 with terrible magic steel heavy plate armor, and beheading double-edged swords. Even if the magic steel crossbow arrows of the ratman crossbowmen hit the magic steel armor, they would only be perfectly bounced off with a crisp collision sound. The beheading double-edged sword wielded by the Black Guard would easily take away the magic steel short swords of the ratman warriors with immature smelting technology, and cut the rats in half with a single blow. Amid the roar, the morale of the Narcs Black Iron Guards was greatly boosted, and under the huge casualties, the ratman warriors began to collapse. Except for the big shieldman, everyone else, follow me and kill him. 2 more bright lighting magics flew into the mine. The 4 Black Guards led by Margaret became the arrows, and killed in the mine in the opposite direction. The other warriors followed behind, tearing the ratman's already broken formation and quickly killing the rats. The battle situation began to become clear. After many attempts and pleadings, Yennew found that her spouse was still unwilling to climb onto her body, so she had to give up the idea of carrying her spouse away. She returned to the air alone and kept wandering, unwilling to leave for a long time. For Lester, although he had been together for more than a month, he could no longer ignore the silver-winged dragon bird, but now was not the time to tame and train the dragon bird, because the thing he was most worried about had happened. The red-skinned demon rat had the intention and action to invade the surface. Leave me a few crossbowmen who can operate the Dark Blood Demon crossbow, and take the rest back to maintain order. Yes, Lord Lester. Absol left with the others, while Lester rode on a horse, and took 3 crossbowmen holding Dark Blood Demon crossbows to the direction of the glittering Silver Mountains. Seeing Lester continue to move south, the silver moon in the sky also flapped its wings and followed closely. After more than 10 minutes of rapid running, the 4 people soon arrived at the foot of the glittering Silver Mountains. The shield soldier stationed outside the mine heard the sound of horse hooves and looked back. His face was stunned at first, then he was overjoyed, put down his heavy shield, and saluted the newcomer in Narxus. Lord, you are back. How is the situation? Where is Margaret? Frowning and scanning the circle, Lester did not see many dead soldiers, but there were quite a few dead rats. From this point of view, Margaret was still commanding properly and successfully understood his strategic intention of creating magic steel equipment. Captain Margaret has already led other soldiers into the mines, and only those of us who are not very mobile are left to defend here. Lester nodded without commenting, and without judging Margaret's behavior, he led 3 crossbowmen directly into the dim mine, leaving the silver moon in the sky spinning anxiously. The lighting magic hovering in the air was losing its effect, but fortunately the remaining halo was enough for Lester and the 3 crossbowmen to see the road to the next lighting point. Without any hesitation, Lester ran to the third mine tunnel. Going deep alone is always a taboo in war. I didn't expect Margaret to make such a simple mistake. At this moment, I can only hope that those rats don't know how to ambush. The moment I entered the third mine tunnel, I felt a sudden chill on my back, and Margaret realized that I had lost myself in the killing and made a fatal mistake. There was no time to issue the order to retreat. As if to confirm Margaret's idea, a group of rat warriors and rat slingers suddenly rushed out of the hole in the back of the third mine tunnel, blocking the back. Form a circular defense formation. Set up your guns. Seeing that she couldn't get out for a while, Margaret could only build a battle formation in the narrow mine tunnel to resist the next attack. Strangely, the rats blocking the back did not launch an attack. Their eyes were full of cruelty and bloodthirstiness, but they always suppressed their own nature, which made the soldiers whose backs were blocked have a bad premonition. Boom. 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 The premonition turned into reality. Amid the heavy sound of metal collision, a huge red-skinned ratman with a body of 2 meters and holding a mountain copper club high led a dozen equally tall armored rats to slowly walk out from the depths of darkness. In an instant, all the red-skinned demon rats fell into madness and worshipped the tall ratman. 7 updates today, plus an extra update for the monthly tickets in December. As of 1900 hours, the subscription situation is as follows. 183 high subscriptions, 162 average subscriptions, and a total of 828 subscriptions. The situation is much better than expected. There are more than 100 readers supporting this book, which is enough for me to continue writing slowly. Come on. Come on. Come on. Chapter 103 Bloodthirsty Rage. The battle situation took a sharp turn for the worse. In the initial frenzy of the rats' attack, the defensive formation was shaky and the soldiers began to suffer casualties. Fortunately, the Black Iron Guards had a strong fighting spirit. With the help of Meredith's defensive spells, although there was a brief sway, they soon stabilized. Margaret and the other 4 Black Iron Guards had already left the main force and were fighting with more than a dozen giant rats at the front. The duel between the elite infantry became the key to the victory or defeat of this small ambush. With a turn of the wrist, the sharp dark red long blade slashed across the neck of the giant rat. The rat grinned with fangs and let out a painful and hoarse wail. The next moment, blood flowed like a stream. The strong smell of blood poured on Margaret's armor, making the Black Guards, who were already glowing with blood, even more hideous. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The giant ratman in the lead screamed, swinging a meter-long mountain copper club and smashing it down fiercely. Margaret jumped back and dodged it narrowly. Taking advantage of the gap in the giant rat's attack, she stabbed the giant rat's chest with her magic steel sword. With a crisp ding sound, a crack appeared on the rough mountain copper leather armor hid by the invincible magic steel sword. Another giant rat found the right opportunity and chopped the girl's back with the long knife in his hand, cutting a shallow dent on the Black Guard's plate armor. Reorganize the formation. Seeing that the 5 Black Guards, including herself, were gradually dispersed by the giant rat group, Margaret roared, resisted the giant rat's attack, and began to retreat to the rear. Squeak, squeak. Seeing the human's intention, the Ratman General refused to give up. He picked up the mountain copper club again and stuck tightly behind Margaret, not wanting the girl to return to the formation. Ah! A scream came, and 3 soldiers defending in the rear were hit by the jar. The green acid quickly corroded the iron armor, melting the soldiers' flesh and bones, and the defensive formation was vacant. The soldiers who died in pain were soon dismembered by the rat warriors, and the gaps were torn madly. The mage who was bombarding the rear with spells was also panting at this time, and his magic power began to run out. Fortunately, the morale of the rats came and went quickly. The rats that blocked the way back fled in all directions, leaving space for everyone to escape. Retreat in an orderly manner under the cover of the mage. Don't expose your back to the enemy. Margaret, who was entangled by 3 giant rats, had the intention of dying. After issuing the last order, she did not retreat but advanced. The Black Guards stay. Cover the rear with me. Yes, Commander. No longer retreating. Knowing that they would die, the 3 loyal black guards also entered a desperate state. "No. We will not retreat." Lord Lester said that the soldiers of Narxis will never retreat. Someone screamed in a fanatical voice, forgetting the formation, and launched a counterattack against the rat warriors who were still entangled. More people were holding on to the exit, using defensive formations to wear down the lives of the ratmen. The roar of the soldiers could no longer be heard. Under the desperate charge, the blood seemed to ignite the armor of the Black Guard. In the rage, Margaret felt that the weapons and armor on her body were getting lighter and lighter. All the lives in front of her were filled with disgusting hatred. She wanted to kill all living things with a double-edged sword in her hand. Kill, kill, kill. The Crollo moan and the sharp blade that plundered life merged together. Margaret cut off the head of the giant rat with a knife. The grey eyes began to turn scarlet, and a happy smile appeared on the face under the horned helmet. As if it had drunk a lot of blood, the heavy plate armor of the Black Guard made of magic steel exuded a faint red light. "That's it. That's what I pursue. To kill all enemies and die on the road of pursuing blood glory. So happy Lord Lester, I'm so happy after I die. Can I go to see you?" Squeak. The unconscious murmur injected new strength into Margaret. Feeling the sudden change of humans, General Dong Dong's heart was pounding, and he retreated in fear. The giant rat warriors, who had already begun to waver due to heavy casualties, saw their invincible general begin to retreat, and their morale plummeted instantly, and they fled into the depths of darkness. "Die. You all must die." As if she had lost her mind, Margaret chased into the darkness alone. "Leader." After quickly killing the remaining ratmen, the 3 surviving Black Guards turned around, silently raised their magic steel swords to their compatriots, and launched a charge. "Take away their weapons. Mages with magic, cast spells to control them." A familiar and steady voice came from behind. Without turning back, the Narxans present were full of confidence. Meredith's eyes lit up, and she began to cast spells quickly. Alice, who was in the front, was already exhausted and had several knife wounds on her body, but she couldn't relax at this moment. When she really faced the charge of the Black Guard, she understood what oppression and despair meant. "I can't retreat. I only have one chance." With the gun put away, Alice thrust forward with the most perfect posture. The tip of the gun hit the magic steel armor on the hand. Although it did not penetrate, it also caused a huge impact on the numb right hand. The magic steel longsword slipped out of his hand and fell to the ground. Without the magic steel longsword, the Black Guard's consciousness sank, and he fainted directly on the ground. On the other 2 sides, a sword and shield soldier used his shield to block the slash with difficulty. Under the wizard's frost magic, he fixed the Black Guard and successfully took the weapon. Another soldier was cut in half by the Black Guard because of fear. Seeing that the Black Guard was about to rush into the crowd and kill, a dark red light flew past, along with the gauntlet, and directly penetrated the Black Guard's arm, hindering the Black Guard's attack. Taking a dark blood magic crossbow with good crossbow arrows again, after aiming, Lester pulled the trigger. The crossbow arrow accurately hit the hilt of the Black Guard's sword. The powerful impact made the Black Guard no longer able to hold the hilt tightly. The magic steel longsword spun and fell to the ground. The next second, the Black Guards fell to the ground at the same time. "Remove their armor and control the people first." The rest of the people call the big shieldmen outside. After cleaning the battlefield, "The guards are here. Meredith, you follow me." "Yes, Lord Lester." After walking out of the team, the female wizard quickly followed Lester, and the others also found the backbone. Lester restrung the dark blood demon crossbow and picked up a magic steel sword with one hand. "How is your condition?" "I didn't consume too much magic power just now, and I can still fight a high intensity battle." "That's fine." Through Meredith's crystal ball emitting blue light, Lester gained vision. At this moment, he had only one goal, which was to find his general back. Chapter 104, Taking Control. "Yes, my general. Kill these enemies that stand in your way, and you will be able to see me and receive my grace. We will be together forever and merge into each other." With intoxicating sweetness in her ears and Lester hugging her waist, Margaret truly felt the warmth and tenderness of the man. "Margaret will kill all enemies for you, my lord." In the real world, amid the rat's terrified squeaks, Margaret pierced the rat's chest with a knife. drew out the magic steel sword, and chased the next target who was running away with his head in his hands. Even if your mother in Demacia stood in front of you, could you do it for me? Lester's voice was still so soft that Margaret indulged in it. I can kill anyone for you, and I'm willing to give everything for you. If my mother chooses to be your enemy, then she is no longer my mother. I will personally chop off her head and offer it to you. What's more, it was she who chose to follow another man. She abandoned me, and she chose Demacia. Except for my uncle who has died, I no longer have any family. You are my last faith and harbor. It was rare to speak the truth. Margaret's cheeks had a few more attractive blushes, but the blood on her body was getting more and more. Soon, all the rats who lost the confidence to escape were killed, which made the girl feel a little uncomfortable. She was still craving for more blood. My general, promise me to kill anyone who stands in front of you, including my illusions. Those are all false, and they are liars who trick you into being deceived. Only I'm your only master. Kill them. Master, my master. Footsteps came from behind. Margaret slowly turned around, looking blankly at Lester, who was looking at her tenderly under the blue magic light of the female mage. Lester. Sir? Holding the magic steel beheading double-edged sword in his right hand, Lester opened his arms to the girl and said softly, Margaret, don't always make yourself too tired. Find more suitable helpers, or rely on me more. My door is always open to you. Subconsciously putting down the raised long sword, Margaret was about to step forward and throw herself into the man's arms, but suddenly remembered the master's instructions just now. Her eyes were bloodshot again, and she said coldly, You are not my master. Why are you pretending to be him? Raising the magic steel longsword, Margaret made an attacking gesture. You will pay the price for your stupidity. Sir Lester, do you want me to? Waving his hand at Meredith, Lester held the sword with one hand and lowered his center of gravity slightly. Cold weapon combat is also a part of the killer's training, and the girl's advanced swordsmanship was personally taught by him. It seems that some dirty things have bewitched my general. Well, it's time to test the results of your swordsmanship training. If I'm not satisfied, I'll spank you. Lester stretched his bones on the spot and released all the power constraints. He would use Margaret to measure his true strength. My general, let me see if you are qualified to make me pay the price. Deep in the mine, in a hidden rat nest, the rat tribe's high priest Swartscream looked at General Dong Dong, who was kneeling on the ground with sarcasm, without saying a word. Being watched by Scream, General Dong Dong's heart was beating fast, and he could no longer hold back, and was eager to defend himself. Squeak squeak squeak. Speak human language. Didn't I ask you to follow me to learn the language from humans? Bitch, laugh. Stupid. Human is a human. Use, holy iron, mean, berserk martial spirit, soldier. Forget it, you should speak the tribe language. Swartscream reluctantly accepted the setting that his subordinates' brains were not fully developed. After all, not all rat people were as wise as himself. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Lord Scream, it was the despicable humans who used our holy iron to make weapons, and used their despicable frenzy to defeat me and my warriors. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Don't make any excuses for your failure. Scream kicked the giant rat on the head that was 1 meter taller than him, but the giant rat not only did not fight back, but also put its head close to it and whined pitifully. Sighing, Swartscream turned around. Squeak, squeak. You will definitely have no problem with me. The key is to the Rat King, who is in charge of the Holy Stone. You have to find a way to explain it yourself. Explain your ass. I don't believe this. Soon, the defeated Ratmen withdrew all their forces on the surface and retreated to a deeper level. Just after the Ratmen withdrew, the battle in the mine tunnel also came to an end. Margaret looked at the unarmored enemy in despair, blocking her attacks again and again. She held the sword with both hands, while the other party held the sword with one hand. Skill, strength, courage. She was completely suppressed by the other party and had no power to fight back. This was a hard gap that could not be made up by any means. Lester picked up Margaret's weapon with a sword and hugged the unconscious girl. Ms. Meredith, please seal this intersection with magic first, and we will talk about the rest after we go out. Okay, Lord Lester. The silver moon hovered in the sky, anxiously watching the humans on the ground moving things in and out, but never saw their spouses, and couldn't help but become more and more impatient. Beep. Beep. Wanting to go down to see the situation, but afraid of hurting those humans who knew their spouses, the silver-winged dragon bird kept wailing and calling, eager to get a response. The strange scene in the sky had long been seen by the soldiers, and the rumor that the Lord's disappearance was actually a domesticated dragon bird also spread among the soldiers. As expected of you, Lord, you can tame such a beautiful and powerful dragon bird by yourself. It is also a dragon blood silver wing that is rarely seen in 1,000 years. Amidst the whispers of praise and admiration, Lester, who was holding Margaret, and the other defensive soldiers withdrew from the mine. After making simple further defensive arrangements, Lester greeted Silver Moon in the air. After hesitating for a while, the somewhat frightened Silver Moon still landed on the ground and came to Lester's side amid the exclamations of the crowd. What made Silver Moon feel relieved was that humans did not attack her. After calming down the restless silver-winged dragon bird, Lester said to Meredith, "Take Margaret back to rest first, and then go directly to the war workshop to find me. I have some clues about the origin of these rats underground and the mountain copper used by the rats, as well as the out-of-control characteristics of the magic steel equipment that suddenly showed up. The specific situation still needs to be tested in the war workshop." Looking at Margaret, who was unconscious in the carriage with concern, Meredith nodded and got on the carriage. After watching the carriage leave, Lester was troubled by Silver Moon, who was unwilling to leave. "How about I build a house for you here first?" Lunkin tilted his head and looked at the man with a silly face, not understanding what was going on. Woohoo! Chapter 105 Ghosts of Dalmor Plains. More than a month ago, many rumors were spread on the Dalmor Plain. Some people said that there was a group of faceless assassins in the darkness, killing people without blood. Others said that they saw with their own eyes that strange warriors wearing terrible armor blatantly killed mountain bandits and robbers. The mountain stronghold of dozens of people was destroyed overnight, and no one was left alive. Some people said that it was a group of devils from hell, who came back from hell for revenge. To the west of the Dalmor Plain, in a hidden valley between the cols, there is a huge secret gathering place with more than 100 vicious bandits entrenched here. All the bandits and vagrants who make a living by looting know that this belongs to the terrible beheaded bandit group. The gathering place is built in the gap between two high peaks. Only the mountain road in the north can lead to the outside world. The end of the road in the south is a cliff, separated by a natural chasm, which is easy to defend and difficult to attack. In the largest wooden house in the gathering place, Doyle pushed away the beautiful girl who was serving him and put on his pants with some irritation. "Lord Doyle, you." The half-dressed beautiful woman wanted to continue to please the man, but was shouted at by the man. "Get out. You. Get out." "Yes." The girl knelt on the ground in grievance and slowly crawled out. Fuck. Every time Doyle closed his eyes, he would think back to the Narkson village that inexplicably ate more than 200 of his people. Recently, there were many disturbing rumors in the north, which made Doyle begin to doubt whether there was any connection between the two. "Is the man named Lester coming? Come here." A loyal subordinate standing outside the door walked in quickly. "Lord Doyle." Doyle's scarred face frowned. "Call Brian over." "Yes." The subordinate hurriedly left, and soon a man with a fair face, who looked shy and kind, walked in. The man knelt on one knee and saluted Doyle. "Lord Doyle." "Stand up and talk." "Yes." The two sat side by side on wooden chairs. Doyle stared at the ground, his face uncertain, and he refused to speak for a long time. Brian asked tentatively, "Lord Doyle, do you have any instructions for me to do? Is the mountain village stable recently?" Brian smiled, his tone gentle and affirmative. "Lord Doyle, there are food and people in the mountain village. After eating and drinking every day, the brothers train and play. It can't be stable anymore. Recently, let everyone restrain themselves a little, play with women less, and set up more sentries outside to avoid being killed by others." Although it was a bit strange, Brian nodded and agreed. Understood. Slightly relieved, Doyle still trusted the new staff member in front of him who was ruthless, knew how to please him, and had means. Except that he was too perverted sometimes. Everything else was fine. I want to ask you, how is the intelligence investigation on the destruction of the Blood Hand Group going? The Blood Hand Group is a mountain bandit organization located east of the Headless Bandit Group. Doyle has always been concerned about the fact that his old neighbor was uprooted, and he has specially sent his men to investigate. Unfortunately, the result was just a pile of burnt bones. In addition to no survivors, there were no additional witnesses and intelligence. The whole bloody village seemed to be haunted by ghosts, and it was gloomy. Hearing Doyle asking about this matter, Brian's face became solemn. It seems that the Blood Hand Group provoked an organization that should not be provoked. After our investigation, we found that the number of people who destroyed the Blood Hand Group should not be too large, and they are well equipped, highly skilled in combat, and ruthless. Judging from the remains and broken bones in the corpse pit, the dead guys are suspected to have been severely tortured and killed in extremely cruel means. Gone. Facing Doyle's dissatisfied eyes, Brian was a little embarrassed. It's really that those people did it too cleanly. I've never encountered such a thing before. This is the limit of what I can do when there are no survivors. The only traces have been wiped out by everyone. Brian, please punish me, sir. Doyle looked deeply at Brian, who knelt on the ground again, and he had no reason to be angry. If other idiots were to investigate this matter, I'm afraid they wouldn't report anything to him. Okay, get up. Yes. Brian sat back in his seat again. His butt only touched the edge as usual, which made Doyle feel less blamed. With Brian's tactfulness, he would never deal with him in a hypocritical way. That could only be that those people did it too cleanly. So clean that it made people shudder. For some reason, at this moment, he thought of the North village that had caused him to lose many soldiers. Anyway, this situation has occurred near our gathering place. The cause and effect of this matter must be clarified, and we cannot fail to prevent it. You kid, do this job today, and report to me in the evening, without any mistakes. Understood. I will arrange the defense matters now. Doyle squinted his eyes and watched Brian leave respectfully. He nodded with satisfaction and closed his eyes. At this time, he no longer had the mind to play, and a vague sense of urgency slowly approached. The sun finally set, the night fell, and autumn was about to arrive. The summer insects in the north desperately sang their last swan song. The swan song of the summer insects was like a song of soul-burying elegy that could not be described by ice. Finally, as if the throat was strangled, the insect chirping stopped abruptly in the highest pitch, and dead silence came. The evil ghosts in the night showed their claws. On the beam, Morris suddenly opened his eyes, took out the magic steel short thorn, and silently fell from the sky. Covering his mouth, he thrust the short thorn into the heart of the robber guard. HMM. After stabbing the bandit twice more, Morris put his spear together and walked out of the sentry post slowly. In the distance, Dimmest, with a satisfied smile on his face, raised his dark blood crossbow and killed the other two eyes hiding in the dark, capturing more lives as a hunter. The blood flowed silently, and it looked particularly soft under the bright moonlight. Seeing Dimmest clear the outer bandit sentries, Morris smiled silently at Dimmest and disappeared into the darkness together. Tonight is a good day for killing. Hiding the edge at night. The sharp blade of the night is a night blade. Morris pulled the spear out of the guard's heart and slowly pushed open the sturdy gate. As expected of the Lord, it is a good name. Inside the bandit barracks, Dimmest expressionlessly used a knife to cut open the throats of the sleeping bandits, just like a butcher killing countless pigs in a slaughterhouse. Chapter 106. Hell is empty. The woman who was kidnapped by the robbers had her mouth covered. She opened her eyes in fear, but saw a pair of cold eyes. She was about to scream for help and call the robbers, but found that her throat had been cut open. The woman could only make a bubbling sound of ho ho weakly, and soon lost her breath. I tried to give you a choice, but no one gave me any choice. Until the end, we had no choice. Closing the woman's eyes, the silent man who hated to talk rarely said two words. Killing is killing. I will not make any excuses, and I will not apologize. The man turned and left. Outside the granary and armory, a beautiful woman with short hair in a skirt was slowly approaching. She was soon noticed by the robbers guarding the door. They looked at each other and laughed obscenely. Strange girl, why don't you stay at home and sleep with your master at night and come out for a walk? Or is your useless master unable to feed you? He, Who is your master? What's your name? Why do I feel like I've never seen you before? The woman smiled shyly and gently stroked her bulging chest. My master is Lord Lester. As for me, my name is Hyslena. I hope you brothers will take care of me. Hyslena is actually very afraid of pain. Lester? Damn, why does this name sound so familiar? Hey, why do you care so much? People have come to your door, and you are still shrinking there? Are you a man? If you don't do it, I will do it alone. Don't say that your brother is not good enough. That's right. Letting the two wretched men hug her waist, Northless twisted her buttocks, and was pulled to a deserted place by the men. Hey, pretty girl, let me take a good look. Damn, what is this? How come it's bigger than mine? Facing two faces of disbelief, Hylena's apostrophe smile faded, and with an indifferent look, Noddles thrust the dagger into the throats of the two men, then gently hugged the two men who were about to fall to the ground and whispered softly, "My fiancée, isn't she beautiful?" Brian got up from the bed, and when he felt the urge to urinate, the man shook the broken bell. In the darkness, a thin figure crawled out of the doghouse and looked up in front of the bed. Brian kicked the black shadow in the head with a dissatisfied tone. "Why are you so slow?" The dirty black shadow got up from the ground tenaciously, without making a sound, but numbly opened his mouth, raised his head, and let the dirty water flow into his mouth. Under the repeated torture and intimidation of the devil, the black shadow had long lost any consciousness of resistance, and became a puppet who could only obey, and was deliberately trained to be a dog. Facing the black shadow, that had completely lost its personality, the man had no patience at all, just like treating a rotten toy. What's more, he had to specially trick the useless idiot at night. He kicked the stinking black shadow over again, letting the dirty water spill all over the floor. The impatient man began to put on his clothes. "Lick all the dirt on the floor for me. Finish it before I come back. Don't leave any." Seeing the black shadow obediently start to clean the floor, the man's face looked much better. Submitting to the inferiority and anger of the strong can always be released and satisfied in the weak. No matter how perverted, he likes this kind of life. This is the only reason why the black shadow can survive until now, after leaving Beano Village. It is a trash can, and it should do what a trash can should do. Like its useless brother, it should be controlled by himself, and become his slave. No longer looking at his excrement bucket, the man thought about when he could launch a perfect rebellion, and kill the one-armed idiot who was suspicious all day long. The Headless Bandit group should have changed its leader long ago. In addition to Big Head, he has already won over more than half of the bandit leaders. Sooner or later, he will become the supreme master here. The moment he walked out of his house, Brian put on a pure and harmless face and greeted the bandit guards who were patrolling towards him with a familiar smile. He longed to see the same face of fear mixed with respect as always, but unfortunately, he was disappointed this time. With the light of the torch, Brian could see that this unfamiliar guard was also smiling at him. The smile was a bit eye-catching and gave people a sense of physical discomfort. Brian's expression did not change, but he remembered this humble bastard who forgot his identity. He would pay the price for his disrespect. Walking forward, Brian patted the shoulder of the guard who stopped in front of him. "You are pretty good. What's your name? Who do you belong to?" The guard didn't answer, but continued to grin. The corners of his lips were torn and bloody because of overexpansion. There was no smile in his bloodshot eyes, only a cold look that was enough to freeze the soul. Brian's heart skipped a beat, and he finally realized that something was wrong. He looked around and found that the two bandit guards had disappeared at some point. In the empty camp, a faint smell of blood wafted. "Who are you? Why haven't I seen you before?" Taking a step back, Brian pulled out a short knife from his waist. Letting the man point the knife at him, the guard trembled and took out a small box from his underwear pocket, opened the lid, and poured all the confinement milk in the box into his mouth, chewing it with bloodstains on the corners of his mouth, and his spasmodic body began to swing involuntarily. The bitter herbs with an aesthetic effects slightly suppressed the excitement and despair in his heart. Slowly savoring the two most unforgettable emotions in life, the man forced his fingers to close the corners of his mouth that were about to split slightly to prevent excessive blood loss. Brian, who witnessed this grotesque scene, was about to scream and retreat. The next second, the guard stepped forward without warning and took Brian's knife, removed the man's chin, and then used grappling to control Brian's body and led Brian to his own room. Woo woo woo, woo woo woo. Brian wanted to wail and wanted to escape, but found that he could not do anything. Finally, he was forcibly tied to the wooden bed by a stranger. On the floor, the shadow raised his head blankly, watching the man who controlled the demon close the door, staring at the face that had been annihilated in countless pains, and the pain caused by licking the floor and rubbing his tongue disappeared instantly. That was once my hope, but it became my despair in the hands of the devil, and I did such terrible things to my parents. There was even a period of time when, under the guidance of the devil, the people closest to me became my targets of hatred and my sworn enemies. Until now, there is nothing left. Nothing matters anymore. The word brother was tightly pressed down by the throat, and the black shadow's nerves were broken. In an instant, I forgot everything except my identity. It was too painful, so it would choose a way to live without pain. Forget yourself, forget the past, forget everything. Don't think, don't feel, don't treat yourself as a person, then you won't feel pain. Retracting his gaze from his sister, the trembling Hector said the first words to the teacher, who was tied to the bed by him with tears in his eyes like a pilgrim. My teacher, it seems that the girl has also become your proud work. Look, she has completely forgotten her identity. It's really too perfect. Brian looked at the strange intruder who suddenly started to go crazy blankly, wondering why the other party controlled him, since he called him a teacher. Tonight, you are mine. You belong to me alone. No one can take you away from me. Not my sister. Not my father. Not my mother. Not even Lord Lester. Can't. I have killed all the others, and their skins were peeled off completely according to your request. My teacher, look, am I smiling happily? Isn't it? It is you who taught me to use the most unbridled smile to release myself when I'm most desperate. Look at my smile. Am I happy? Are you satisfied? Are you satisfied? Are you satisfied? Ha. Ha ha. Ha ha ha. Brian's pupils suddenly dilated, and he looked at the chilling madman in front of him in horror, and finally remembered who the owner of this face, that looked much more mature, was. He seemed to have returned to that night, when he personally handed over the bloody knife. The intermittent and creepy laughter of the boy. He suddenly regretted that he didn't kill them all directly. Oh, it seems that you remember it, but unfortunately, in order to prevent your wailing from disturbing my work, I can't fix your chin. Use the sharp magic steel flying knife to cut Brian's clothes. After a long while. Indeed, you are the most special. I will slowly taste every inch of your skin. My sister witnessed everything about my adulthood. You are the mentor who made me grow up and made me understand what it feels like to want to exchange 100 lives for a little bit of pain for someone else. Come on, start to taste pain, taste despair, and then witness with your own eyes how your best student completes a perfect work. Tears dripped down her face as she smiled. Come on, smile, laugh, laugh. Ha, ha, ha ha, ha ha ha, ha ha ha, ha ha ha, ha. Woof. Woof, woof woof. Chapter 107 Night of Revenge. Look, when you were asleep, you had already lost everything, and you knew nothing about it. Lester, how did you get here? How did I get here? The man whose face could not be seen clearly laughed disdainfully, his voice like a night owl. You think too highly of yourself. I'm just curious about your head, and want to see who will cut it off. Hoo-ha hoo-ha hoo-ha. Sitting up from the bed, Doyle looked at the familiar environment in shock, and breathed a sigh of relief. Turning his head to look at the moonlight outside the window, if he guessed correctly, it was already the second half of the night, almost dawn. He didn't ask a woman to sleep with him tonight, but when he woke up at this moment, he suddenly felt inexplicable panic and loneliness. There was no sound around, even the most crisp sound of insects in the mountains had disappeared. He needed someone to accompany him, even if it was a man. Someone. Fred. Fred. Ina. Ina. Doyle shouted, calling for his most loyal guard, calling for the most obedient beautiful woman he had captured, but there was no response from outside the house. It was dead silent. It was as if everyone, all living things were dead. Jumping off the bed in fear, Doyle began to put on his clothes. took down the scimitar hanging on the wooden wall, and put on the exquisite steel armor he had robbed. Doyle walked out of the house. Outside the house, two strange figures stood on the left and right with their backs to him. The one-armed man's heart sank, and he observed the surrounding environment, but found that the surrounding environment was no different from usual. There was no smell of blood, no signs of fighting, and only the guards guarding the door had disappeared without a trace, as if they had never appeared. "Who are you? I don't seem to have provoked you." Without any intention of answering, the two people wearing the same armor stood silently in place, one holding a dark red spear in his hand, and the other holding his hand in front. Doyle could not see anything. Knowing that those who come here are not good, and those who are good will not come, since the other party has already appeared here blatantly, it is obviously not realistic to rely on his own men to rescue him. Doyle thought about it, and began to retreat into the house. He did not want to expose his escape route before, and he could not care too much at this moment. The most important thing was to stay alive. "I never told you that you are allowed to leave here." The man holding the spear suddenly turned around and looked at Doyle expressionlessly. "The revenge of Bela village will be avenged on you and the bandits tonight. Either we die or you die. There is no third result. Unfortunately, almost all of your companions and men are dead. Now it's your turn. You choose between me and him, and I will give you a decent death. Are you the survivors of Bela village?" Without responding to the spearman's question, Doyle cursed himself for letting the tiger go back to the mountain. In his heart, he vowed to kill all the bandits in the future, but his face was sincere. His knees even softened, and he knelt on the ground, kowtowed with snot and tears. "I robbed your village because I was bewitched by that old man from the Mostek tribe. I apologize to you. I was wrong. I was really wrong. Please forgive me. I will never do bad things again from now on. I will find a place to live peacefully. Will it work, Doyle? It seems that you also know that it is useless." Morris smiled strangely, and the other man turned around. Doyle noticed that the man was holding a beautiful crossbow in his hand. Doyle lowered his head and looked earnest. "Really, can't you let me go? I'm willing to give everything in exchange for my life." Morris smiled. "You said this to a man whose wife was insulted and killed, and whose son died. Doyle, I really despise you." Standing up, Doyle wiped away his tears indifferently and drew the scimitar from his waist. "You mean, if I kill any one of you, I can live?" Swish. A magic steel crossbow arrow flew from the other direction and pierced straight into Doyle's left knee, piercing through and breaking the kneecap. Doyle, who fell to the ground, let out a miserable wail. Why waste words with him? He wants to bargain when he is about to die. Morris and Edist were stunned. Demaster came to Doyle, picked up the crossbow arrow that fell on the ground, and smiled at Morris and Edist. "I think he has hidden a lot of treasures. He was about to go into the house just now. Maybe there is a secret passage. I just feel itchy, so I use him to vent my anger." With a scream, Doyle picked up his scimitar and slashed it towards his neck, but the scimitar was kicked away by Demaster. "Beside me, you only have one method of suicide with the highest success rate. That is biting your tongue. Come on, let me see your courage. Show your courage to slaughter the villagers. As long as you dare to bite, you will not suffer any hardship. I will give you a quick death. Otherwise, I will only peel off your skin, smash your bones piece by piece, and after knocking out your secrets, I will keep you in the pigsty as bait for pigs." Without hesitation, Doyle closed his teeth and bit off half of his tongue. Blood gushed out of his mouth. Doyle stared at Demaster with ferocious eyes. Wow, 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 wow. "Are you saying that I should kill you quickly?" Doyle nodded. Demaster smiled and patted Doyle's stupid face. "You don't really take my words seriously, do you? Haha, ha ha ha. Can you believe the words of bad people? Little fool. Woo woo woo, wow 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 wow. Go ahead, until you die. You belong to me." Morris looked at Demaster and sighed. He got it for nothing. The sun rose from outside the mountain and gradually rose to the highest point, but the warm sunlight could never blend into this dead land. The land was dyed crimson, and the smell of blood really spread. Because of the heavy smell of killing and death, animals, insects and birds fled one after another, and there was no life within a radius of 10 miles. More than 200 corpses were piled up in dozens of wooden houses, and more than a dozen people had their ears cut off, including Big Head. The house was filled with flame-resistant grease and wood. A fire was ignited and burned for 3 days, with black smoke covering the sky. More than 50 innocent women who had been tortured, but had survived, were placed on horse-drawn carriages. Under Maurice's arrangement, they left the cave with other important supplies and set out on the road back to the south. More than 20 women committed suicide after being rescued, and Maurice and his 5 men did not stop them. A person who really wanted to die could not be stopped. All they could do was to bring back those lives who wanted to continue living. Chapter 108 The Life of King List. Among the survivors, there were many victims from the northern villages and many female survivors from the northern Nor village. Unfortunately, apart from Hector's sister, there were no family members or relatives of Maurice and others. The other 4 people had truly lost all their families. For Hector, although his sister was still alive, it was no different from being dead. Because he needed to take care of his sister, Hector was given the privilege of sitting in the back of the carriage, unlike the other 4 who had to work as a groom after a few days of hard work. Hulu hulu. The girl closed her eyes tiredly with a dog-like snoring sound, and instinctively wanted to crawl to the ground. Hector forcibly picked up his sister who was about to fall asleep, and gently patted the girl's thin back. In the fearful look of the beautiful girl, he restrained all smiles, and was serious and gentle. Don't be afraid, sister, brother will take you home. Woof, woof. For the spiritually poor people, apart from daily work and gossip, rumors and gossip are the most fascinating. More than a month later, Emerald Territory regained its former peace and tranquility, only because the wise and powerful lord returned to his loyal territory, and General Hearteater also found a bunch of spies and traitors who made life difficult for others. Not only that, there are many legends in the territory about how the Lord tamed the arrogant dragon bird, ranging from children's fairy tales to adult stories. In the more normal version, the Lord defeated the most powerful silver-winged dragon bird in the legend through a dignified battle, and succumbed to the arrogant big guy with a fist as big as a casserole on the snowy peak. The most outrageous version is secretly circulated, saying that the great Lord Lester conquered the beautiful female bird in a day and a night through the special skills and unparalleled charm of a man, making the beautiful dragon blood bird willing to be submissive to the domineering and persistent lord, and enjoy the favor wantonly and heartily. What? You said you don't believe it? You said I have no basis? If that was not the case, why would the dragon bird settle down in the Urus Mountains not far to the north of the territory? Why did it hover over the Lord's head every day and cry so softly when the Lord touched it? In the Lord's hands, the ferocious dragon-blooded dragon bird was not like an oxen female warrior at all, and was as cowardly as a Dalmatia woman. After the information fermented for a few days, it seemed to be confirmed one night. Some people said that when the Lord visited the dragon bird, he heard some indescribable strange sounds with his own ears, but soon this person disappeared from everyone's sight. This rumor was also rejected by the Lord himself. Everyone knew that the rumor propagator who made false testimony went to the quiet forest in the far west and volunteered to become a glorious lumberjack. Thanks to this, the creators with wild imaginations, based on this version, and through secret word of mouth, many more outrageous and perverted versions were derived from the mutation. It seems that seeing that the Lord was not angry and did not stop it, the people of Emerald Territory, although unwilling to agree with the slander of the Lord in the story, also regarded these messy things as entertainment. Among them are the stone-armored giant lizards that are like birds, the shy and cute swamp dragon lizards, the panting and charming two-legged flying dragons, and even the red-blood mosquitoes and burrowing monster insects living in the quiet forest, all of which surrendered to the Lord and made the Lord unable to extricate himself. There are also various versions of the Vastea people combined with the easternmost island. Some people even say that the Great Lord is the ancestor of Vastea Zyro, who directly combined with the original chaotic spirit body to create Vastea Zyro. Those half-humans with tails and beast ears are the descendants of the Lord. What ears are sensitive points? What tails are the key points? In short, it is convincing and makes people blush, allowing readers to enter the perspective of the Lord in trembling and shout long live the Lord in peace and tranquility. Fortunately, people who create color and vulgar literature also know what restraint and fear are. seeing that it is getting more and more outrageous. In order to avoid getting into trouble, Lester's name was soon changed to Lister, and then Lister had many more legends passed down by word of mouth, such as the ancestor of the Vastaya people, the clan father of the Vastaya Zairu, and the ruthless Orc King Lister. The mess is still well made, and the creator is just short of a stack of Shurima paper to write a book. In the end, the shadow crossbowman came forward and mercilessly hanged several idiots who slandered the Lord the most. The beast-taming storm and brainstorm gradually subsided, but it was inevitable that it would spread abroad. As for how the matter would develop, even the dark-faced Lester Lee could not guess, just like he could not guess that in less than a month, Lister's story was written into a banned book. This was beyond his expectations. Fortunately, the forbidden magic stone colossus Galio had not been made by the Dalmatians, otherwise he would have had a love affair with the cold stone statue that he had to tell. These useless garbage books must be banned. It's just nonsense. He wanted to tear up the precious notebook in his hand, but after hesitating for a while, Lester still threw A Day and a Thousand Nights, the biography of King List, the ancestor of the Vastaya, on the table. It's not that I think this thing is valuable, but I occasionally pick it up and flip through it. It's more or less interesting to use it to kill time. Thinking this way, Lester let go of the confiscated manuscript and turned to look at Margaret, who had recovered. It turns out that the spiritual culture in the territory is too poor. They would spend so much time on such a boring thing and make up such untrue rumors. Margaret, am I that kind of person? After Lester decided to deal with the rats underground, he began to build the Colosseum to enrich the cultural life of the energetic people in the Emerald Territory, especially those who were looking for trouble. The stone-armored giant lizards should have their share of suffering. It's best to find a public one and give the giant lizard some medicine. All these books will be confiscated. All of them will be burned. By the way, directly detain the Shurima merchants who sell paper in Groft Harbor. Try to get their paper-making technology and secretly sell paper in the Emerald Territory. I think he should be ready to pay a sufficient price. Although she didn't know why Lord Lester was angry about Lester's affairs, Margaret could see that it seemed that the Lord was not completely angry, but seemed to be venting some dissatisfaction. She was also reading those books and even thought they were well written. I see. How are the preparations for Triwul going? Will Demacia send troops? Demacia rejected Triwul's request for troops. The people of Triwul are completely desperate. Some wealthy people have already fled Triwul by boat, and we are ready to send troops. Yes, let's set the time in the near future. Groft Port alone is not enough. We need more land and coastal ports. Do we also want to take down Kilgafur in the east? Knowing that Naxos was busy reorganizing its army and warbands at the moment, Lester nodded. They will not be our opponents. Send out the Blackguards and take them down together. They are all small villages. There is no point in dragging them on. I see, Lord Lester. If you don't have any other orders, I will take my leave first. The blonde female general saluted solemnly and was about to turn around and leave, but was stopped by Lester, who stepped forward. The girl's cheeks suddenly turned red. I can see that the after effects of the boiling blood, the violent state after excessive killing, brought by the magic steel equipment, are still there. Lester pinched the blonde girl's cheek and said softly, "You are in charge of Kilgafur this time, so don't go out. Just stay in command. I will lead the team in Triwul personally." Margaret hurriedly avoided Lester's sight. She was a little embarrassed, but she still agreed. Understood. Once we conquer the southern part of the Silver Mountains this time, we will prepare to completely annihilate the rats in the caves and master the true secret of Mountain Copper. We must firmly grasp the strategic military resources of Mountain Copper. As long as we find a way to suppress the boiling blood, we can have an army. I wanted to say that it was an invincible army, but when I thought about the various unstoppable original demons, the fallen warriors who became the Ascendants, the Protoss who did not take human life seriously, and even the Mordekaiser who was accumulating power in the underworld, and the Void Watchers who were spying on the material world outside the Rune continent, I couldn't say the word invincible. With magic steel equipment alone, it is very likely that they can't even beat the group of perverted orphans in Ionia, the first land, who are proficient in magic and can create a tornado with a knife. Moreover, the Demacia's secret silver equipment is not vegetarian. After thinking about it, Lester changed his words. We can have a powerful army. Yes. Margaret nodded obediently and suddenly hugged the man in front of her. Lester was stunned after being outwitted. He did not expect that the blonde girl, who was usually introverted and shy, would be so proactive this time. Putting his arm around the girl, Lester whispered, "What's wrong?" The girl buried her head in the man's chest and spoke in a low voice. "Lord Lester, I'm afraid that one day I will never be able to return to you. So, The man raised his eyebrows. "Go ahead, my female general, as long as I can do it." As if she had drawn strength from Lester's words, Margaret let go of the man slightly and stared into the man's eyes, very seriously. "Lester, I want to give you a child, okay?" The man froze completely. "Margaret, are you trying to rebel by using my son?" The 7th update is completed. Please subscribe and vote. Updates will resume as normal tomorrow. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109 Riz, the Self-Deceiving. Freljord, south of the village of Nelzayag, at the northern foot of the Iron Mountains. A small dispute has just begun over the fragile farmland ecology. Every life has the right to survive on the Valoran continent, but I have something to ask of others. Trolls, can you please go gray somewhere else? Taking off his hood, the wandering wizard calmly looked at the 4 ice blue trolls more than 10 meters away, his voice soft. Hearing the wandering wizard's threat to him, the irritable troll in the lead stopped picking his teeth, first asked his companions to notify the tribe leader, then turned his head, and under the gaze of his jumping companions, he raised a huge wooden stick and threatened in the awkward Freljord language. "Muggles. Bald purple guy. Get out of our pasture. Otherwise, I'll eat you. Kill, Muggle. Eat, purple potato." Good squeak. Good squeak. Squeak. Unable to suppress his irritable nature, the 3 trolls who simply held a pre-war meeting launched an attack during the negotiation. After the warning, the trolls still chose to attack, and Riz decided to take action. Raising his hands, the surging magic energy quickly became law under the constraints of the formation diagram, and quickly formed under the feet of the 3 trolls like a surging river. As for why it was not the sea, Riz didn't want to turn this place into a valley abyss, because the abyss could not be used for farming. The scene of the 2-meter tall trolls charging was still very scary. At least behind the wandering wizard, the 12 panicked tribal warriors had the urge to escape. Rune imprisonment. The surging magic power gushed out from the feet of the 3 trolls, and 3 rune shackles that mortals could not break free were generated in the formation diagram that burst into strong light. They quickly extended along the trolls' bodies and forcibly banned all movements. The trolls waved their wooden sticks in panic, standing stupidly in place, a little at a loss, and even lost control of their mouths, just like 3 wooden men. They have lost their ability to move, and the rest is up to you. After hesitating for a while, Riz gave up the idea of directly killing the trolls with magic. After all, this is a struggle for survival between the villagers of Nelzayag and the trolls. If it weren't for the rune fragments under the land of Nelzayag, he wouldn't have intervened in such a dispute. Yes, but it's not necessary. In addition to recovering the world rune, he doesn't want to bear any more innocent killings. Although this killing is counted, he always has his share. But the reason why people can continue to live in difficulties and constantly find the reason that makes their tired selves persist, isn't it written as self-deception? The hard-working are the richest, evil will be punished, and good people will be rewarded. These are just lies that they deceive themselves. Thank you for your help, Master Mage. The voice of the tribal warriors brought Riz back to his senses from his low mood and restored his previous calmness. With the assistance of the wandering mage, the 12 tribal warriors waved their spears confidently and easily stabbed the terrified trolls to the ground. After a few strokes, they became blood goods and died completely. With a sigh, by the time Riz removed the magic, the 3-headed troll had been stabbed into a rotten sieve. Seeing the corpse fall, the tribal warriors quickly and skillfully began to decompose the troll's body, peeling the skin and bones, extracting the tendons and marrow, looking for any usable parts, including edible fat and meat, and even smelly toes, until the bags on their bodies were full. You really don't want to suffer at all. You are worthy of being a northerner. Finally understanding why the tribal warriors had to carry so many leather bags when fighting, Riz shook his head, turned around, and smiled bitterly at the lovely snowflakes flying all over the sky. This is Freljord, a beautiful and cruel place. Everyone waited patiently for the arrival of the next batch of trolls until this troll tribe was killed, or chose to flee here. It was about the survival struggle of the tribe. It was either you die or I die. There was no compromise. After learning that Demacia refused to send troops to support, many surrenderists appeared in Truel, although there were no resistant factions at the beginning. Isaiah didn't want to get involved in the affairs of the adults in the village, and of course he had no right to get involved. He was just a shepherd boy who made friends with the beast ancestors. Instead of worrying about whether he would be beheaded by the Narxons, he might as well talk more with his Yodel friends, and listen to the stories of Bandle City. That was the fairy tale life he dreamed of. While the adults were arguing, 3 different races of life were also having a heated conversation in a secluded place at the foot of the Silver Mountains. Gurgle Scare stared at the two with wide eyes, sticking out his tongue, trying his best to express his valuable opinions. I've said it several times, we are Bandle people. Oh, no, it's Yodel people. Bandle City. You stupid bipedal creature. You confused me too. Kled jumped up angrily, waving the axe in his hand, but made Isaiah laugh. Mr. Kled, whether it's Yodel or Bandle, aren't they all Del? What's the difference? What's the difference? You actually told me there's a difference? Bandle is a city, Yodel is a person. Yes, a person. Do you understand, stupid boy? Oh, I see. Yodel is not a person, right? Sure enough, Yodel is a city. Mr. Kled, where is Yodel? You're going to piss me off. Can I chop you? Gurgle hoo-hoo. After circling around the two of them twice, the excited dragon lizard Scare joined the battle with interest and licked Isaiah's cheek with his tongue, making the boy smile happily. For Isaiah, he didn't really enjoy this meaningless argument. As for why he deliberately said he was a Bandle, he just wanted to change the subject. Because every time he came up, Kled would ask him if the Narxons had come, whether they could fight, and other questions, and he almost went to the village to fight. Mr. Kled is really warlike. Seeing Kled staring at him unkindly with an axe in hand, Isaiah thought for a moment, and decided to end the topic about the Bandle people immediately. Mr. Kled, is the saddle that Uncle Malus made for you useful? Thinking that he could now ride safely on the stupid lizard, Kled gave up the idea of chopping the stupid bipedal human cub alive. I have to say, your human craftsmanship is still good. Scarl is very satisfied. Forgetting the unpleasantness just now, Kled skillfully turned over and rode on the dragon lizard and held the reins. Look, I have become a great dragon lizard knight now, and I will defeat all the fools and cowards who stand in my way. Not bad. Clapping his hands, Isaiah squinted and continued to smile. Then Mr. Kled, are we friends now? Patting Scarl's hard scales, Kled jumped down and grinned. Of course, my human friend Isaiah, you have successfully gained the friendship of General Kled. Then can General Kled tell us the story of Bandle City again, about Rambo, the Yodel who likes to collect junk? Yeah, that hairy rat-like guy likes to collect junk. He likes to pick up things that others don't want and take them home, and tinker with some weird high lethality weapons. The fact is that they can't even kill cockroaches. And his height is an absolute dwarf even among Yodels. Probably not even up to your knees. He also always wants to get praise from another Bandle man. It's more like special attention than praise. Kled, who laughed at his own people without hesitation, suddenly thought of something and smiled maliciously. I remember telling you last time that the gunners in Bandle City, the leader of those gunners, is called Tristana. Tristana is the object of Junkman's affection. All the smart people in Bandle City have seen this, excluding fools and idiots. The leader of Bandle City's gunners is called Tristana. Yes, her name is Tristana. She also has a hand cannon called Boom. That hand cannon is bigger than her body. I don't know how she controls that big guy. I have seen with my own eyes that she used boom to blast herself into the sky. Wait, maybe Scare. I should also consider getting a poison gas cannon. Scare, are you willing to carry a cannon? I think it's just right to put it on your butt. If you like to run away, then point your butt at the enemy and release your stinky farts to suffocate them to death. Googa googa. TSK, that's boring. After being asked back by Scare, Cled curled his lips. Does Tristana know that Rambo likes her? Probably. Just as the two were chatting excitedly, a thick smoke rose from the village at the foot of the mountain, and Isaiah's face changed. It's the village's warning and gathering signal. Maybe the Noxans are coming. No, I have to go back to see my mother. Hearing this, Cled quickly rode on Scare, picked up the axe, and looked at the smoke excitedly. Let's go, Isaiah. Let me see if the Noxans are as powerful as you said. If you dare to lie to me, what will happen? After thinking for a while, Cled said with a fierce face, then I will chop you. Woo, woo. For the Lethawicamalas, the days of anxiety are finally over, because the Noxans are really here. Everyone give up resistance. Gather at the village gate. Give up resistance. Gather at the village gate. The Noxans will not attack us. The voice of the village chief came from outside the Lethawicca's house, which made the Lethawicca feel more at ease. Maybe life will be better if the Noxans come. With a wry smile, Malus put down the half-sewn leather armor in his hand and walked towards the village in trance. Everyone come and register your personal information. Line up. Don't rush. The soldier in charge of recording asked the villagers' names and other information and recorded the basic information on the bound Shurima paper. Within the solemn defense line formed by dozens of soldiers, the village chief of Trewell was talking to Lester. Please subscribe. Please vote. Thank you everyone. Chapter 110 The confrontation between Lester and Cled. Lord Lester, I have found the people. But, is everything you said true? Can we all become citizens of Naxos in a fair way? Not slaves or something? The old village chief still had some doubts. Fortunately, the man's overly positive and sunny appearance was more persuasive, making the old man subconsciously feel that such a handsome young man should not be a terrible tyrant and liar. Don't worry, old man, don't be afraid. Holding the village chief's hand, Lester said softly, although we are indeed invaders of Trewell, we are not here to kill, but to build a stronger country and a better home. Trewell is still Trewell, and the villagers are still villagers. The only difference is that Trewell has joined the big family of Naxos. You are no different from other Noxans. You are also Noxans. You can also join the army to gain military merits. You can settle down and live a stable life in the Emerald Territory with your skills, or you can devote yourself to the construction of the Emerald Territory or the Immortal Fortress. We are all one family, and there is no need to worry about being hurt. The old man breathed a sigh of relief, and his face was also a little more relaxed. That's good, Lord Lester. We just want to live. Please forgive us for asking Demacia for help. We thought that Naxans liked to plunder villages and massacre villagers as rumored. It turned out to be a misunderstanding. Waving his hand, Lester didn't care. Rumors are always full of extreme prejudice. These are malicious smears against Naxos by enemies, in order to bring hostility to Naxos. After a pause, Lester sighed. These countries always can't stand others being better than themselves. I can understand. Things went very smoothly. Except for a dozen wealthy families who had already fled the village, more than 200 people in Trewell joined the Emerald Territory and became real Noxans. However, accidents always like to jump out when people are caught off guard and give people a big slap in the face. Noxans. This is Lord Cled's land. I'll give you a chance. Hundreds of people turned their eyes to the yodel on the dragon lizard's back. The young man next to the dragon lizard looked a little pale and pursed his lips tightly. Feeling the infinite hostility, the female lizard's scaral scales quickly stood up, and she instantly spread her legs and ran back to the road she came from. The speed was so fast that the yodel on her back fell directly off. You cowardly, stupid, and farting female lizard. Get out. The yodel cursed and turned over several times, dizzy and unable to stand up. With a fixed look, Lester's face was more smiling. He waved to the soldiers and black guards who drew their weapons and slowly walked towards the furry one-eyed yodel. He reached out and helped the Yordle, who was only as tall as his waist up, patted the Yordle's stinky fur clothes, and handed the simple axe that fell on the ground to the dwarf. Swallowing the curse words he had prepared, Kled was a little confused. He looked down at the axe in his hand, not understanding why the human in front of him would do such a thing to him. If he was shouting like this, shouldn't the two sides be enemies? Yordle, I see your madness and courage, which is what your Narxus needs. Do you want to join Narxus? In Narxus, you can prove your honor and courage with your strength. Lester's voice was very sincere and his eyes were gentle. His mind was a little blank. Kled didn't know whether he should use his axe to hit the human in front of him who was kind to him, or yell and provoke the other party's anger, let the human fight with him, and thus test the Narxan's military strength. After thinking about it, Kled decided to let go of this strange human in front of him who had a good impression of him, and he also had a good impression of him. After making a decision, Kled's attitude and tone improved a lot. Human, I will only join the strongest and most powerful country. If you can defeat me, I will join Narxus. But I will not accept orders from anyone. Okay, it's a deal. Lester took 2 steps back and drew out his beheading double-edged sword. Kled roared and raised his axe without hesitation. The battle was about to start. In the distance, Isaiah felt the kindness of the Narxan general to his Yordle friend and couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. At least his Yordle friend and mother didn't have to die. Further away, Sker, who was almost back to the top of the Silver Mountains, found that his friend was not on his back. He wailed and turned around and rushed down the mountain. Under the gaze of more than 200 people, Kled swung his axe with great force and chopped at Lester. Lester fought back with his sword, raised with one hand. With a click, Kled loosened his hand under the huge recoil force, and the axe flew out of his hand. The axe made of hardwood and cast iron was directly cut into 2 pieces, and the blood shadow fell back. The beautiful dark red long sword was like a waning moon, hovering over the head of the stunned Yordle. At this time, Kled was like a groundhog that had frozen in the middle of an argument, staring at the spot with his one eye wide open. Any words to describe the charm of that sword at this moment seemed a little pale and powerless. In the silence, the shocking scene hit the hearts of everyone present like a heavy hammer. Anyone with a little vision understood what it meant for the axe to make a whistling sound, but it was easily blocked and broken by Lester with a single-handed sword. Everyone, including the Narxan Black Iron Guard and the Black Guard, was amazed and admired the true strength of the Lord of the Emerald Territory. After putting away his weapons in silence, Lester squatted down and took the initiative to pull Kled's stiff little hand. Welcome to the powerful Narxus, my first Yordle friend. My name is Lester. What's your name? Lester. You broke my axe. You have to compensate me with a new one. After a long time of reaction, Kled first expressed his dissatisfaction to the human in front of him, and then said seriously, my name is Kled, human. Remember, I will become the greatest general of Narxus. Okay, my great general. In Kled's dissatisfied eyes, Lester touched Kled's furry ears and little head, and stood up. I will give you a new axe, but you have to be my good friend. Take a bath often, pay attention to hygiene, and fight for Narxus. It's a deal. Lester. But forget about taking a bath. It's too troublesome. Although there were only a few simple conversations, Kled felt that the human in front of him was very close to him, and this feeling did not make him hate it. Everything should have been settled, but the next moment, Sker, who was coming down the mountain, rushed over and hit Lester directly. Kled's one eye condensed and roared. Sker, why did you come back? Sker stopped in grievance and began to tremble timidly. Chapter 111 The Breadstick Purple Potato Spirit Who Steal the Stone Trough. Naziag, a difficult night is coming. Snow is falling again from the sky, and the fluffy snowflakes are fluttering and sweeping across the village under the cold wind, and soon this small village with less than 100 people is covered with silver macupe. The village warriors who are patrolling at the entrance of the village wrapped themselves tightly in thick fur coats, buckled their fur hats, and stood their simple spears at the foot of the wall. They blew a few breaths of hot air on their red hands, and stamped their feet to warm up their stiff and numb hands. Such severe cold is not uncommon in Freljord, but the warrior vaguely knows that the ancient myths told to him by his grandmother are probably true. The myths explain why Freljord has become a stingy, snowy, and windy northern wasteland. Unfortunately, the grandmother with Alzheimer's disease did not say what the burning god's name was in the end, and naturally she would not say anything really meaningful, except that the god likes to use a hammer. The warrior only knows that the god who caused all this has the greatest power. That is the power of God, which can move mountains and fill the sea, and easily destroy this village. The warrior had a new vision. If people can possess the power of God, what great things will they do? In a place that the warrior could not see, a black shadow hurriedly walked and came to the animal pen in the south of the village. Perhaps because the weather was too cold, or perhaps because of other reasons. Tonight, the warrior guarding outside the animal pen slipped away and chose to get into the warm bed. This made the black shadow feel a lot more relaxed. There were 3 stolen eunuchs, northern yaks, tied in the animal pen. The eunuchs, who were separated from the group, looked a little listless. Seeing the strangers who walked into the animal pen, eunuch, who exuded a unique smell of cow dung, yawned and continued to lie on the ground. Even the horns on his head lost the desire to attack people. The black shadow was naturally not here to steal cattle. He just felt the magic fluctuations and followed the guidance of the runes to come to the rough stone trough. After hesitating for a while, the black shadow still launched magic and attacked the stone trough. Silently, the stone trough was shattered by the magic, and the 3 eunuchs jumped up in fright, mooing and staring at the shadow. It was not until the shadow showed goodwill to the uneasy eunuch and felt that the fatal threat had disappeared that the eunuch breathed a sigh of relief, carefully lying on the ground again, staring at the shadow, ready to escape at any time. Pushing aside the scattered stones, the shadow took out a thumb-sized light blue stone from it. Feeling the temptation of the increasing power, the shadow couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief and took off the long leather bag behind him that had never been opened. Is it because the fragments are too small to penetrate the barrier of the stones? Not bad luck. The leather bag contained a magic scroll. Even the shadow didn't know its true origin, but the shadow knew that it could help him temporarily cut off the magic fluctuations and let the chattering world runes give him a quiet world. He took out the scroll and slowly unfolded it. A scroll with complicated magic pictures and texts appeared in front of the black shadow. He felt an irresistible temptation to take it for himself, but he recalled the terrible ugliness of his teacher's submission to desire, and the scene of countless lives disappearing like the breeze. In an instant, the black shadow lost all interest in the blue stone, and even had a lot of disgust in his eyes. He threw the light blue stone into the scroll without any nostalgia. The magic wave flashed, and the stone merged into the scroll, and the corrupting whisper disappeared. Lie down where you should be, don't try to seduce me. Without hesitation, the black shadow rolled up the scroll again, sealed it, and put it into the leather bag on his back. Looking at the messy rubble all over the ground, the black shadow thought that, if he was a little troublesome now, he would have less trouble tomorrow. The next day, in a simple village, a hooded figure was slowly leaving, with a bag full of breadsticks in his cloth bag. At the entrance of the village, Einkus had watched the figure leave, and nodded to the tribal warrior. After the tribal warrior finished speaking, the man walked into the village with a frown on his face, still full of doubts. Such a powerful mage lingered in the animal pen for so long. Why did he just steal a stone trough for feeding livestock? Unaware that the heartless purple potato spirit had left Nelzayag and once again set out on the road to the north to search for the world rune, Lester was worried about Skarl while holding the curious Miss Sinner. Your Skarl doesn't seem to be suitable for living in the settlement. Outside the Emerald Territory, Lester looked at the dragon lizard that was shaking like a sieve and shook his head at the short yodel. If you can't overcome the problem of fear, this state is likely to hurt others. I can't let Skarl enter the Emerald Territory. Not only was Lester worried, but Kled was also quite worried. I found a foolish partner who would never leave me, and a powerful country that could prove my bravery. These were originally 2 things worth being happy about, but together they became my troubles. Seeing that Kled was also somewhat hesitant and embarrassed, Lester also understood why in the previous background setting, Kled always broke away from the Narxan army and fought everywhere, leaving countless legends. It was probably related to the cowardly scare. You can leave your war pet outside the settlement like me. My Silver Moon is a silver-winged dragon bird. She has made her home in the Urus Mountains in the north. I can visit her often. She also has her own freedom and can do what she likes. She can also come to see me when she wants. If you agree, you might as well find a suitable place outside the territory to place Scare. Gurgle. Hoo-hoo. Scare rubbed Cled's head. The hard scales scratched Cled's teeth. Cled twisted his mouth and spat a mouthful of thick phlegm on the ground, and began to express his love for the dragon lizard in soft words. Lester, to be honest, I have no way to deal with this hopeless idiot and coward. I'm so unlucky to meet her. After kicking the dragon lizard hard, Cled jumped up on one leg, covering his toes to relieve the pain. This stupid lizard has scales that are difficult to be damaged by swords, but she is always more timid than anyone else. Before she met me, in order to escape from her own people and other beasts in the silent forest, she broke through the cliff and climbed up the high snow mountain alone, which is what you call the Silver Mountains. She ate grass for more than a month. Can you understand? Even an ant is braver than her. A dragon lizard that should eat meat and chew bones ate grass for more than a month. She only started to eat meat after meeting me. Since then, she has never left me. It's incredible. She treats me like a meat man. Putting down his right foot, Cled sighed, but still let the happy Scare stick out his tongue and stroke his furry face twice. She is not a smart dragon bird. She will go crazy if she leaves me. So, I'd better take her to live outside. Then let's do this. Lester thought about it and made a new suggestion. You take Scarl to live in the silent forest first. There is our camp over there. Find a secluded place to build a house and live there first. After your axe is forged, I will make other arrangements for you. How about it? After thinking about it, Cled nodded. At present, this seems to be the best solution. In order to give back to the love and encouragement of book friends, during the monthly ticket activity, this book will be changed to 3 updates per day. Please subscribe and vote. Thank you for your support. Chapter 112 Trade Caravan. 4 months passed quickly, late autumn ended, and Valoran entered the midwinter season. The weather began to get colder. Emerald Territory developed step by step, and had a brand new look. The crops in the fields had been harvested, and sent to the granary. The rich fruit forests in the north, made the people of Emerald Territory enjoy the abundance. They were also exported to the Immortal Fortress and villages along the way in the form of material exchange, and exchanged for some other materials and small items for Emerald Territory. The rest of the fruits could only be dried into dried fruits, and put into mud jars, because the technology of making glass was not mature yet, and became winter snacks. By hunting the fur of wild animals, and harvesting the cotton fields in the south of the Silver Mountains, the tailor shop of Emerald Territory summoned female workers to make a large number of winter clothes, so that more than 400 people in Emerald Territory wore warm clothes. In late autumn, the accumulated firewood was piled outside the wooden houses of the people, so that the villagers who had free time could comfortably lean against the stove and enjoy the long-lost tranquility of winter. The military camp in the east has already taken shape. The low wall less than half a meter high divides the east area into several different parts. The garrisons of the Black Iron Guards and Shadow Crossbowmen are clearly divided. Like other places in the territory, the military camp is also equipped with many dry toilets to prevent people from urinating and defecating anywhere. There are also many more training objects in the shooting range and training ground. The most eye-catching ones are the metal wheel track sliding combat dummies holding shields and wooden swords, and the swinging arrow targets that can be shaken by hemp ropes and pulleys, which add a lot of fun to the soldiers in training. In the former, the soldiers can experience the realistic force feedback of the dummies during training, and constantly adjust their chopping direction and strength, so as to achieve realistic training. In the latter, many crossbowmen who are keen on crossbows throw away their crossbows and pick up the crude training short bows to participate in shooting training. The fun of projectile shooting and direct shooting has divided the archers into 2 distinct groups, and they began to fight openly and secretly, forming a positive and healthy competitive relationship. The war workshop in the south was working day and night. The eternal furnace was spewing out scorching flames, smelting ore quickly, and making all kinds of things. Not only farm tools, weapons, and armor, but also climbing claw boots, and flying tiger claws specially designed for rock climbing in mountains and caves, as well as rope ladders that could be hung on horn rocks, were made according to Lester's design drawings. Many samples were also made. This opened the eyes of the blacksmith apprentices in the Emerald Territory. They were amazed by the Lord's wild imagination and design concepts, and admired the old blacksmith master Crystal's erudite and superb forging skills. The only bad thing was that, in order to keep it secret, the activities of the blacksmith and his family were still fixed in the war workshop, and they were still under surveillance and control. Fortunately, after Lester had done a good job of prevention, he arranged a month's vacation for the blacksmiths. Except for not being allowed to leave the Jade Collar, the blacksmiths and their families could move freely. This successfully released the pressure on the blacksmiths, who had been suppressed for several months, relieved their dissatisfaction, and avoided the bad ending of Strike Rebellion. After receiving the promise that the vacation would be extended again in the future, the blacksmiths who returned to the workshop once again devoted themselves to their enthusiastic work, preparing various materials and equipment for invading the underground world. The residential area in the west is also slowly expanding. Under Lester's planning, an area dedicated to entertainment and recreation was set aside in the inner circle, and the first tavern and unofficially controlled by the Emerald Territory was built. The former provides the people with a small amount of wine and ale obtained through the exchange of materials with the Immortal Fortress and Shurima merchants. The latter will serve as a transit point for the trade post, providing a place for caravans traveling to and from the Dino line to rest and replenish supplies. It is worth mentioning that the Emerald Territory also has its own caravans, which began to travel between Demacia and the Immortal Fortress, circulating various materials in the form of ancient Shurima coins or barter. Under the leadership of the Shurima caravan uncle, Demacia finally acquiesced to this sudden unethical relationship. Demacia on the west coast is like a pure and shy little girl who was pulled into the dark in confusion and tension, allowing the Emerald Territory caravan, a barbaric man belonging to Naxos, to drive into their secret hinterland in groups with a gentle attitude. After going back and forth, when they came to their senses, they had left indelible traces. After all, even the Demacians had to admit that many small items such as razors, nail clippers, soul extractors, or tweezers from the Emerald Territory seemed insignificant, but they were very useful. Small items can be said to have changed the lifestyles of many Demacians, making the upper class in power more elegant and more aristocratic. Although Demacia was able to imitate and create them soon, there were still many upper-class Demacians who were unwilling to miss out on the exquisite Emerald Territory handicrafts in order to save a few Shurima coins. The objects they imitated did not have the exquisite green emerald leaf marks. This allowed the Emerald Territory to collect a lot of ancient coins from Shurima, including priceless gold coins. In future plans, the inner ring of the Western District will become the most prosperous commercial area in the outer city of the Emerald Territory. At this time, there was no suitable currency. Most of the time, the forces were still in the primitive form of bartering. It was more appropriate to use Shurima or urgently needed important materials as currency for trade. Life showed its unyielding will. Dozens of lives were born in the winter of this year. The Emerald Territory was more energetic. The Emerald Territory, which encouraged childbirth, rewarded families with many living materials. With sufficient food and no shortage of housing, many young people who were only in their teens quickly teamed up and began to work hard to have children throughout the winter. Carpenters repaired many collapsed and cracked wooden beds and sighed that the stamina was really strong. Perhaps it was because the oak and birch wood used to build the house did not provide ideal sound insulation. Walking on the gravel streets of the West District, one could always hear faint and lewd sounds, which made the young girls blush, and the experienced Narcs and aunts smile and sigh. After the incident, the women could not help but worry and sigh, because the Lord had no children yet. What if something went wrong like before? Then they would go home worriedly, wash and dress, look carefully in the bronze mirror, and then look at their husbands with a sigh of loss. The 5 Nightblade assassins returned to the Emerald Territory several months ago. Under the leadership of Morris, the 5 reported to Lester, narrated everything they had experienced along the way, obtained Lester's recognition, and re-swore allegiance to Lester, becoming the first Nightblade assassins who were only loyal to the Lord of the Emerald Territory. Afterwards, Morris and his men brought several pickled human heads to the survivors of North Nor village who were still in the Shadow Crossbowmen, which caused a venting howling and generated quite a commotion. Hearing about the tragic end of the bandits, the hatred-filled survivors and villagers felt very happy and wished they could cut a few pieces of meat off the bandits themselves. So far, the feud between the headless bandits and the North Nor village was completely settled. Chapter 113 Eternal Love on the Snow Mountain. In addition to a truckload of northern supplies and several bags of ancient coins, the revenge journey to the north also brought dozens of beautiful women who had not been completely destroyed by the robbers to the Emerald Territory, adding many people of childbearing age to the Emerald Territory. Unfortunately, many women's stomachs had bulged, and they were obviously pregnant with the robbers' seeds. After they came to their senses, they wanted to kill the evil seeds. If Lester had not been closely monitored and cared for, several strong-willed pregnant girls would have cut open their stomachs. After thinking about it, Lester decided to keep these children, not because of sympathy and pity like the children are innocent, but simply because these are precious populations, and abortion is not mature due to technology, which may make women lose their fertility and delay the development of the territory. From the perspective of the territory controller, keeping the children is right, but it is not in line with morality and human feelings. Therefore, Lester made some arrangements and explanations, so that the victims could watch their stomachs grow bigger day by day with disgust. It is conceivable that these children will encounter what kind of disgust and abuse from their mothers after they are born. In Lester's promise and compromise, these children with the blood of bandits will be born, different from other children, and will take another difficult path. This is an unchangeable result. The sins of bandits will eventually need to be borne by someone, even if it is just a baby who knows nothing. It is cruel, but there is no other way. The debt committed by the father must be repaid by the son. On the side of Mount Eurus, two people are climbing up hand in hand. The man walking on the left is wearing a thick black fur coat and warm fur boots on his feet. His thick black short hair is slightly fluttering in the cold wind. His uninhibited and free temperament is spontaneously born, which is 3 points better than his outstanding appearance. The woman in the luxurious dark gold women's long skirt seems a little clumsy. She carefully avoids the round pebbles on the snow with two long legs that are whiter than snow. Then her purple leather boots slip, and she seems to be tripped. She screams and throws herself into the man's arms, and the man hugs her. "I didn't expect you to bring me to climb the snowy mountains." Rose leaned on the man's arms with a smile, and refused to come out for a long time. The man also knew the extent to which women like to play tricks and act like a spoiled child. Seeing that the woman did not come out, the man stopped and waited for the woman to take the initiative to make an impolite request. "Because the snow on Mount Eurus is really beautiful, I want to bring you to see it, and then build a snowman baby for you later." Staring at the delicate and beautiful woman, Lester looked at the silver world under the mountain with a relaxed look. There were many such beautiful scenery in the previous life, but it was a pity that he was always focused on killing when he was with her. "There are many beautiful places in this world, and I want to go to see them with you, measure the distance of the world with footsteps, and depict the most beautiful pictures with my eyes." What a pity. Knowing that the man deliberately arranged the two extremely clingy little girls and the pair of barbarian sisters to bring her out alone, Rose felt sweet in her heart, and her voice subconsciously became soft. "What's a pity? It's a pity that we can't live that long, and this world is too big. Even if I ride Silver Moon, it will take more than half a month to get from Emerald Territory to Immortal Fortress." Lester stared into the woman's eyes, trying to see something, but found that there was nothing wrong with the woman. If Rose was also looking at the man, hugged the man's waist, and whispered, "We can live for 1,000 years. Are you willing to put down everything in your hands and take me to travel around the world?" The man smiled and did not answer. Instead, he let go of the woman, held her hand, and continued to climb the mountain. The woman pouted in dissatisfaction and stood there, refusing to move. "If you don't answer, I won't leave. Do you want to hear the truth?" Rose stared and said angrily, "Is there any need to say that?" Lester smiled and turned his head to look at the horizon. "If we can really live for 1,000 years, then there will be another result." "What result? You don't want to take me away, huh?" Rose also began to act like a little bit of a temper, angrily putting her hands on her waist, looking like she would not give up until she figured it out. "If I can really live for 1,000 years, I will use 1,000 years to learn time magic until I can make our time stop forever." The man picked up the stunned woman in a princess hug and continued to climb the mountain. If there is a deadline for meeting you, or 1,000 years is far from enough. The man's indifferent voice came to Rose's ears. What I want is eternity, the eternity that you and I have. In the high clouds, that the two could not see, a huge bird was hovering. Ink-colored scales, beautiful silver wings and sharp claws, white fur and soft chest. The bird kept humming in a low voice, but its eyes were always fixed on the human men and women 1,000 meters below. Woo 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 woo. Yinu looked at her spouse and the human woman so intimately, feeling a little bit unwilling in her anxiety. She seemed to want to go down and take back her spouse, but she knew that she would be hated if she did so. Since she came into contact with her spouse, Yenu gradually understood many things that she didn't understand before. For example, the cognition of her own race. She understood that her race and her spouse's race were completely different, and she couldn't lay eggs with her spouse at will, and the happiness that her spouse brought her was only her own happiness. Her spouse was not happy at all, and her spouse was just using his hands to help her relieve her sorrow when she was in heat. For another example, her understanding of marks and language has also been greatly improved. She understands more and more words, and her intelligence is getting higher and higher. She can understand many meanings, just like what her spouse said this time, don't disturb him. The most important thing is that Yinu understands that she really crossed the race and fell in love with this human man who rode on her and fell in love at first sight. There is no reason. She just likes it so much that she wants to lay a lot of balls and is willing to actively stick out her buttocks, but it's a pity that it's useless. Woo woo woo. Yinu felt a little sad. She knew that she would never go up to disturb her spouse. She wanted to leave, but she couldn't bear to leave. So she flew for a long time, but she just watched the two people below from afar in the sky, feeling sad and upset alone. Hua. A male dragon bird passing by saw the beautiful goddess hovering in the sky and sensed the seductive breath of the goddess. His body became hot, and he subconsciously tucked his tail and flew straight to the goddess. He used his most handsome flying method to rise vertically into the sky, trying to impress the goddess. Yinu tilted her head, looked at the dragon bird of the same clan who was flirting in front of her with annoyance, and warned with a grin. Who knew that the aroused male dragon bird was not ashamed, but proud, and flew directly behind Yinu, trying to force mating in the air. The silver-winged dragon bird's eyes turned cold. Yes. What's wrong? Under Rose's gaze, Lester suddenly raised his head and looked at the sky. The woman also looked in the direction of the man's sight. Under the clouds, a dragon bird torn into two pieces fell from the distant sky with blood and flesh all over the sky, which looked a bit bloody. It looks like the dragon birds in heat are fighting each other. The woman smiled and turned her head away without caring. In order to fight for the right to mate, whether it is animals or humans, they always like to do whatever it takes, just like me. Chapter 114. Near Delma. Cled settled down in the silent forest. Under Lester's arrangement, Cled had his own forest cabin with Scarl, and also had his own magic steel axe. The axe was much heavier than the previous one, and exuded a dark red metallic luster, which made Cled very satisfied. Although it was a bit difficult for him to use, it was okay. Scarl, you lazy bug. The sun can turn your butt into charcoal. Don't sleep. He casually poked his mouth a few times with the clay water cup and pig hair toothbrush that Lester left for him. In less than 5 seconds, a mouthful of water sprayed out, and Cled finished cleaning his teeth and walked out of the cabin carrying the steel axe. Hearing the call of the yodel, the dragon lizard facing the inner wall of the cabin looked up and looked around, but did not find the yodel in the dark, so he sneezed with a puff and continued to bask in the sun with half of his butt sticking out, lying in the cabin with his eyes squinting for a nap. Cled kicked Scarl's exposed buttocks hard and bared his teeth. It was strange. How come scales started to grow here? We have a heavy task today, man. Lester is right. You should exercise your courage and prepare for us to go to the battlefield together. After fixing Scarl, who turned around and walked out, Cled put on the saddle for the dragon lizard. As long as you can avoid running away this time, stupid lizard, I will make you venison tonight. Giloo. I should have asked Lester to make me a mask or something, otherwise I'll be suffocated to death by you sooner or later. After finally getting Scarl to start running, the stench finally dissipated a lot, and Cled let go of his little hand. I swear, if you fart in front of me again, I will definitely shove my steel axe into your vagina and choke you to death. Hoo hoo. Scarl carried Cled and ran happily into the dense forest. In less than 10 minutes, Scarl ran out alone with scales stretched in the dense forest, cursing the stupid lizard that stupidly abandoned him, cursing the cat demon that attacked him, and the Yodel cursed everything around him. Come on, you bunch of cowards who only dare to move around in the trees. Do you think I will really succumb to you like that stupid lizard? Several agile cat demons bared their teeth and waved their sharp claws to pounce on the short Yodel. Touching his lonely eyes, Cled's eyes turned red when he recalled his past cowardice. I will never make the same mistake again. Hairy thing. If I blink, I'll be your Yodel. Morris on the branch took in everything that happened under the tree, held his breath, and closed his eyes. Is this Yodel so important? City-state on the west coast. Several months have passed since the death of the great knight Sventer, and the people of Demacia have also learned what kind of epic feat happened in the disaster-stricken border village of Homes. Countless Demacians have truly felt the iron will of the Demacian soldiers, and have thoroughly remembered the young knight. The bodies of Sventer and the other ranger knights who died in the battle were transported back. The warriors' faces were covered by the Indigo Legion flags dyed by bluegrass, and they were buried in the gentle land of Demacia, blending with the will of Demacia and forever guarding the peace of this land. The dead became heroes, and the living were commended. The ranger captain Corscott, who rescued many villagers and bought time for the support of the Steel Swordsman Legion, received the Ranger Pegasus Legion flag awarded by General Oren himself with a serious face. He will pass on the will of the Knight Sventer. The happy ending is as beautiful as a fairy tale, just like Kraken thought that joining the army could gain glory and merit, but before truly defending Demacia, he first learned authentic military swear words. Ridiculous. Corscott continued the hero's will. In the eyes of many people, he was also a hero who would rather die than surrender and fight against the northern barbarians. The rest of the Ranger Knights also captured the enemy's heads on the battlefield, gained military merits, and won glory and rewards. Putting aside material things, political resources and land resources are the most precious things. Obviously, after obtaining the right to use a small piece of land in the center of the village, and starting to participate in the political management of Demacia, Coriscot took the first step into the power center of Demacia. Although the compromise behind the scenes was to arrange the next ranger captain as soon as possible, he would not continue to command the soldiers to escape, but he had already won. Unlike the rest of the people who unabashedly praised the rangers, Kraken chose to train alone in the training camp when Coriscot was awarded the medal, chopping the hard training wooden man with a wooden face. He knew what the hell the truth was. It was disgusting and nauseating, but he couldn't say anything. He could only treat himself as a living mute, shut his mouth tightly, and personally become a tailor who sewed the mouths of the villagers of Homes. Because he is a member of the Hilda family of Mithril Village, and the captain of the Rangers, Coriscot, is backed by the Crest family of Iwindale. That family controls a lot of land in Iwindale, and also has its own livestock farms and horse farms. It is very powerful. In the local area, only 2 other families can slightly compete with it under the alliance. To put it bluntly, even many horses of the Ranger Corps were donated to Demacia by the Crest family. If not, even General Oren would find it difficult to find so many horses to form a cavalry. Without horses, where would the Rangers come from? Therefore, the cowardly Coriscot is destined to become the captain of the Rangers, or he can become a hero after abandoning the villagers and running away, and he can decently quit the army and enter politics, and sit his cowardly ass on the heads of ordinary people. The real hero sleeps in the ground with his iron will, accompanied by coldness and loneliness, and can no longer hear the people cheering for him. A group of cowards who are greedy for life and death shamelessly enjoy the glory that the dead hero should have, and enter a higher class. Is this Demacia? Ha. He slashed the wooden man with all his strength, and the wooden sword wailed in the man's anger. Because the blade was not straight when he chopped, the wooden sword broke with a crack. Looking at the cross-section of his broken sword, Kraken's eyes were a little scary, like an active volcano that had accumulated for 100 years. Thank you all for your recommendation votes and monthly ticket support. Because there are too many people, I will not list them one by one here. Thank you for your encouragement and support. Chapter 115 Snow Festival. The Snow Festival is a special festival celebrated only by the southerners of Valoran, south of Freljord. The reason why we are not talking about Freljord is that no Freljord person would be stupid enough to be happy about the flying snowflakes when it snows, unless he is an out and out fool, and the fool has long been chopped off by the War Mother. During the coldest 10 days, the large-scale cold wave in the north meets the moisture on the south bank of the continent, and snowflakes fall from the sky, turning the earth into a little girl in a cool white dress, bringing rare beauty to everyone. During these 10 days, except for the northern barbarians who are tormented by the goat god who likes to knock and hit to the point of hating snowflakes, all the people of Valoran will stop their work and spend a wonderful snow festival with their families or neighbors. On such days, even the Dalmatians and the Narks and Emerald leaders who are confronting each other on the border of Greenfang Eternal Peak have let down their guard and enjoyed the special entertainment and rare peace of their respective armies. As early as half a month ago, the wealthy Emerald Territory began to prepare for the Ice and Snow Festival. For Lester, the Ice and Snow Festival in Valoran was like Christmas in his previous life, full of tempting New Year flavor. He naturally would not miss this good opportunity to celebrate, especially half a month ago, under the attack of the Narks and Blackguard. The Redskin Drat was blocked by the Blackguard at the entrance of the third mine tunnel, and later it was confirmed that the rat retreated underground. Even he wanted to reminisce about the bits and pieces of his previous life during such a festival. Mud stoves and bonfires were lit everywhere, and charcoal was burning in the stoves, which could not only bring heat to the residents of the Emerald Territory who went out to play in the snow, but also provide an opportunity for the gourmet masters who were keen on barbecue to show their generosity and talent. At night, many people dressed in thick clothes played around the stove and enjoyed a pleasant midnight snack. The roots and branches of dozens of trees were also wrapped with floral cotton strips. Under Lester's deliberate arrangement, the strips were dyed into festive red and white colors. Thanks to the beetroots excavated in the quiet forest, red dyes are not rare in the Emerald Territory. The pumpkin lanterns were deliberately hollowed out and made into pumpkin lanterns with built-in animal oil and hung in front of various shops, especially in the tavern called Snowman Feng Mi, where there were various pumpkin lanterns and deliberately made colorful trees placed on the ground for people to appreciate. In order to prepare enough alcohol before the Ice and Snow Festival, the Emerald Territory deliberately purchased a large number of alcoholic beverages from the outside world, just to allow the people of the Emerald Territory to enjoy a wonderful sleepless night during the Ice and Snow Festival. Sitting at the busy counter, Kiram took a sip of the beer in his hand and squinted his eyes comfortably in the melodious sound of the lute. Having just enjoyed a few days of playing with his daughters, the man could not stand up to their overly vigorous and tireless energy, especially when he had to play snowballs with the two little girls for 3 days. Kiram seemed to have returned to the tired nights when he and his wife had just got married. He was so tired that he couldn't even lift his legs. He couldn't even walk with the help of the wall, so he had to walk around his wife for the next few days. Fortunately, his baby daughter already had a reliable carriage driver, so he simply left her in the safest and most dangerous place in Emerald Territory, so that he could relax for a few days. Kiram was still relatively relieved about Lester, who knew when to advance and retreat. With so many women around him, if he was so anxious to take action against his daughter, he would not have created such a beautiful and happy paradise in Emerald Territory. Squinting his eyes, enjoying the rare peace and drunkenness, Kiram saw his beautiful wife coming to him in a trance, pouting her seductive lips to him. Lord Kiram, I toast you Miss Ira, you're here. Muammar under the influence of alcohol. Kiram also pouted his lips, stuck out his tongue, and squinted his eyes to kiss. You can't do that, Lord Kiram. I have a wife, and there are too many people here. It's not a good influence. Looking at Kiram, who was close to his mouth, Salak, who was holding the wine glass, was horrified and almost poured the beer in his hand directly on Kiram's face. After opening his eyes and taking a closer look, Kiram retracted his head in disappointment. What? It's Salak. Come on, have a drink with me. Gulp gulp. Salak also drank it all in one gulp, sat next to Kiram, and breathed a sigh of relief. At present, it seems that he doesn't have to sacrifice his bud tonight. Lord Kiram takes care of me all the time. I really appreciate it. We are all family. What's the point of talking about taking care of each other? If you have trouble, I will help you. If I have trouble, you will help me. This is the interpersonal relationship that should exist in the Emerald Territory. Lord Kiram is right. Salak raised his eyebrows. Knowing that his late wife was a weak spot for Kiram, he did not dare to bring up this topic. He just smiled and looked at the middle-aged female Taylor Kisserly, who was sitting in front of the stove and wearing a beautiful floral dress. Ms. Kisserly is really a great beauty. It is said that Ms. Kisserly's husband died in the early years of sailing. Many men have pursued Ms. Kisserly, but unfortunately they were all rejected. I don't know what kind of man Ms. Kisserly likes. Tut tut. Don't you have a wife? Be careful, I will tell your wife that you like Ms. Kisserly. Rolling his eyes, Kiram threw down to Shurim a copper coins and signaled the young waiter in the tavern to give him another glass of wine. Taking the large wooden cup, the young male waiter came to the wooden barrel of beer, turned the valve, and filled a glass for Kiram. No matter how beautiful Miss Kisserly is, she is not as beautiful as Miss Hilla, the wife of the god. Alas. Will she find another man in heaven? Kiram's face became bitter and he sighed deeply. I'm just saying. I dare not have any second thoughts. Besides, with Miss Kisserly's eyes, I'm afraid only a man like the Lord can catch her eye. Let's not talk about this, young man. Give me a glass too. Okay. Seeing that Kiram had no interest in Kisserly, Salak gave up the idea of matchmaking and pleasing her. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that the young lord was raising Kiram's daughter as his wife. If he didn't please his future lord father-in-law now, when would he please him? Lord Kiram, Mr. Salak. Noticing the gazes on her, Kisserly stood up, with a decent smile, raised the patent silver cup of wine in her hand, gestured to the two of them, put it to her lips, took a sip, and smiled. Happy Ice and Snow Festival. Kiram and Salak also picked up their big wine glasses and laughed. Happy Ice and Snow Festival. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116. Who is the girl to you? Outside the Lord's mansion, Lester and his family were enjoying a relaxing and happy night. Meredith stood by, expressionlessly using magic to disperse the snowflakes falling from the sky. Rose, wearing a black silk dress, sat on a chair at the door, reading a book by the light of the pumpkin lantern, and smiling gently at the man from time to time. The two barbarian sisters, Taylor and Jis, were wearing bold little leather skirts and low-necked leather coats, and were noisily throwing snowballs around the mud stove. They were having a great time fighting back and forth, and soon the snowflakes on the leather skirts and leather coats were melted by the fire, and became a little wet, so the two young girls would flip their collars from time to time to shake out the white snowballs in their collars. This made Lester lose his mind involuntarily, which made Miss Howe and Hina, who were making snowmen, a little dissatisfied. Brother Lester. After straightening Lester's blank face, Hina, wearing a cute purple cotton skirt, put her hands on her waist and stared at Lester, a fan who was a little absent-minded, with her big cute eyes and puffed cheeks. Don't look at Sister GC and Sister Tally's balls. Ah. I didn't watch the ball. Hey, what ball? Wait, Hina, who told you that I like to watch the ball? Lester was dumbfounded. How old is he? Why did a good little girl start to talk dirty? Brother Lester, Hina and I have known how lustful you are for a long time. You like big balls the most, right? Miss Howe, wearing a cute beige cotton skirt, sneered at the side, with a look of contempt. When Hina and I have big balls in the future, I will suffocate you to death in the big balls. Rose burst out laughing after hearing this, and Meredith couldn't help laughing. If he really did this, he would probably make that bad man proud to death. The man was speechless, not knowing how to respond, and then began to reflect on his behavior. Was it because I was too unrestrained? It seemed that I had to avoid doing that with the Angel sisters as much as possible in the future. Not far away, the barbarian sisters smiled at each other, and everything was said without words. Concentrate on making a snowman. Hina expressed her dissatisfaction in a concise manner. Okay, watch me make a big snowman for Hina, and Miss Allister rolled up his sleeves and started pushing the snowball that was already the size of a child's head. Miss Howe and Hina followed behind and exclaimed continuously, watching the small snowball become half a person's height. The only drawback was that the snowballs in some places were stuck together, and the overall look was a bit uneven. Then Lester made another slightly smaller snowball and piled it on top of the big snowball. Dang dang dang, using magic to shape a beautiful ice blue carving knife in his hand, Lester began to cut and draw on the snowball. This action made the barbarian sisters, who were addicted to snowball fights, couldn't help but run over and become curious babies. Just as the 4 curious kids surrounded Lester to admire what a snow sculpture is, Rose, who was sitting on a chair, spoke up. He has a high talent for magic, especially for the use and perception of ice element, which is outstanding. He has also reached a certain level of understanding of magic symbols. You taught him very well. Meredith nodded slightly, with a respectful look. I only did the simple part that I could do. It was Lord Lester who had a high talent. Rose smiled, as if she recalled the scene when she first taught the man language, and for a moment she actually felt a little happy. Yes, he has a high talent for learning, and is very hardworking. Even when I'm not around, he has been studying with the scrolls I left behind. Now, except for the overly complex Vastea and the ancient Acathian language, he can communicate in other languages in a simple way. He is very proficient in Nargthen, Demacia and Freljord. Now he is focusing on Shuriman. Unfortunately, I don't have much teaching materials about Shuriman. If he wants to gain enough proficiency, it is better to study locally or go to the academy. After a silence, Meredith whispered, Lord Lester, will he go to the Black Rose Academy for further study? I have tried to test his attitude towards black magic. His original words were, whether it is black magic or white magic, as long as it can produce the necessary positive effects, it is worth learning. We should not have any prejudice or arrogance towards unknown knowledge, otherwise, it will only reflect our own ignorance. After a pause, Rose squinted her eyes and looked at the starry sky with snowflakes flying. In his opinion, magic is just a means to achieve an end, and there is no evil or good in itself. This is one of the reasons why I like him. He is never arrogant enough to define something easily. The nature of everything is determined by him. It is a decision, not a judgment. This is very important. He decides what to do, but he will not easily judge what others should do, let alone judge whether what others do is right or wrong. He may hate the black magician who sacrifices innocent people to make cursed ashes, a spellcasting material, but he will not feel disgusted with the black magic itself. Instead, he will be interested in the principles and meaning of this magic until he comes to his own conclusions and thoughts. This is an indispensable and important quality on the road to knowledge of magic, and it is countless times stronger than some sanctimonious white magicians. Finally, Rose closed her eyes. If he is willing to study at the Black Rose Academy, after he finishes his work, you can take him and tally there. As long as you pass the exam, I will give you an assistant teaching position. Since you are unwilling to be my eyes and ears, how far you can go depends on your own ability. I understand, Ms. Rose. Now shall I explain to you what I have observed? No need to talk about this now. Let's put aside these messy troubles and enjoy the hard-earned peace. There will be more things next year. There will always be a day to figure out the world runes. Rose took her eyes off the snow sculpture that was about to take shape, nodded with satisfaction, picked up the book again, and quickly started reading. Seeing that Rose had no intention of continuing the conversation, Meredith did not continue to talk and turned her eyes to the 5 people in the distance again. On the other side, under Lester's careful carving, a snow girl in a skirt appeared in front of the 4 women. Putting down the ice carving knife in his hand, Lester cast the shaping magic again, turning the somewhat rough snow girl from mosaic into a nice blue high definition image, and picked up the carving knife again, patiently modifying the last part. Soon, a sky blue ice girl wearing a beautiful long dress with her hands clasped appeared on the snow. Lester also thoughtfully added an ice base. Hey, this Iceman looks like me. Zina was the first to exclaim, pulling Lester's clothes. "Brother Lester, is this me when I grow up? So beautiful." "Nonsense. It's obviously me. Look at her eyes and eyebrows. It's obviously me." Miss Ha pointed at the face of the snow girl, not to be outdone. "It really looks like a real person, a bit like Ms. Rose. Brother Lester is so amazing." The barbarian sisters looked at each other, their eyes full of admiration, guessing that the man might have designed it by combining the characteristics of many girls. "Brother Lester, who did you carve? I don't think I've seen this face before." Hearing Zina's question, including Rose and Meredith who put down their books, they all turned their eyes to the man. "Her." The man smiled, very gently. "It's my best memory." Above the sky, snowflakes were all over the sky, and in the whistling cold wind, the sound of wings flapping could be heard faintly. Woo woo woo, ah. Unfortunately, no one could hear it except the cold wind. Chapter 117 The Madman Who Throws Knives. Narkson Calendar, 3 AD. Far away in the east, the people of the First Land are preparing for the upcoming Spirit Blossom Festival, but many people have died in the attacks of evil spirits. Under the inspiration of the spiritual realm, the first generation of the Guardians of the Balance, who had just established the Temple of the Balance on the Holy Mountain, discussed and began to recruit disciples with outstanding qualifications with the doctrine of balancing the two worlds and expelling evil spirits. Most of them were victims of attacks by evil spirits in the spiritual realm. The Balance cult is eager to defeat the invaders of the spiritual world with its own power, and to inherit and protect the peace and stability of the material and spiritual realms of Ionia with its own will. In the warm spring breeze, the pain brought by the Rune War seems to have left the Valoran continent, and all places show a thriving scene. The tenacious life is like weeds in the wind. After the mess, it will break through the hard soil and push away the heavy stones, and once again show its vitality to the world. The forbidden magic stone forest of Demacia is still transforming into forbidden magic stone bricks. Pieces of white marble are mined and cut out, and will eventually become the cornerstone of Demacia's majestic capital. Under the order of Jarvandark, the great merchant Vandal is ready to sail to sea again for trade and find excellent animal trainers. Narxus also began to get restless. After completing the task arrangement of spring plowing, the Immortal Bastion sent two powerful 100-man war groups to open up the north. After defeating the bandits and robbers along the way, they will build their own homes on the uninhabited land suitable for living. Under Lester's introduction, Kled and his dragon lizard became independent soldiers of the Narxus pioneering war group as Emerald leader support warriors, and embarked on his own road of courage. Time flies and it is summer again. When the gears of the world began to turn, after more than 3 months of preparation, Lester and his army were also ready to conquer the underground world. More than a dozen sets of magic steel equipment, brand new iron armor and steel swords, sufficient food supplies, various logistical materials for rock climbing or lighting, and even construction materials for underground outposts were placed in the reserve warehouse at the entrance of the mine in the shimmering Silver Mountains. In the southern area of Emerald Territory, the war workshop with insufficient production capacity expanded several forging rooms again. After a year of apprenticeship, the old blacksmith with a big beard, Steiner, the most outstanding blacksmith apprentice of Crystal, could already make simple farm tools by himself. He also had his own apprentice forging room, and began to accept orders from residents of Emerald Territory to further hone his forging skills. Since Emerald Territory, with a population of only more than 600, still implements a unified material rationing system, except for a few reasonable and legal self-use outputs, all means of production must be handed over to Emerald Territory for redistribution. In addition to various construction work arranged in a targeted manner, the extraordinary development efficiency is reflected in this Emerald Plain. Self-sufficient life is very satisfactory for most people. This also made Lester give up the idea of cutting other production capacity to cast and issue metal currency. The coinage had to be postponed. What needed to be done now was to use time to develop the territory and increase the population. After not participating in the expansion of the north of Narxus, the only thing left was to explore the underground world and exterminate rats. Lester still attached great importance to the origin of the mountain copper ingots that could resonate with his spiritual world and bring visions. In the underground headquarters of the Nightblade Killer, Hector expressionlessly tied the dog leash to his good sister, who was licking the back of his hand with her tongue, and walked out of the room. His sister's belly was getting bigger and bigger. Thinking of this fact, the expressionless man instantly put on a smile and walked straight to the second underground floor. With priority construction, the second underground floor already had dozens of square meters of open space. The brass wall lamps emitted a long flame, illuminating the bloody training ground full of training facilities. After Hector left the stone stairs, he saw the dull Dedist hitting the human sandbag hanging in the air. The sandbag contained a rapist who knowingly committed a crime in the Emerald Territory. With irrefutable evidence, the Nightblade Killer obtained the right to dispose of the rapist, and finally assigned it to the most honest Dedist. For Lester, some criminals died too quickly, which was a relief. It was a pity to kill them directly. Of course, it would be better to make use of the waste. It happened that the arena was not built, and the Nightblade Killer filled this gap. As long as he used it, and returned it to himself, he could use it to deter others. After a pause, Hector stood outside the 10-meter throwing knife target with a playful smile and narrowed his eyes without talking to the paralyzed mute. With 2 swooshes, 2 magic steel throwing knives flew through the air and landed perfectly outside the target, making 2 holes in the wooden wall behind the dart target. Hector did not mean to give up. He took 2 steps forward and stood still, throwing another throwing knife. This time the throwing knife hit the dart target, but not the bullseye. With a good sense of distance, Hector recovered 3 throwing knives and began his daily throwing knife practice. On the other side, Dedist retracted his gaze and punched the sandbag that had already oozed a large amount of blood. Hearing the obvious sound of bone cracking in the sandbag, Dedist took a half step back and kicked the sandbag with a right whip kick. The stench instantly spread in the room. It was obvious that some bag of filth had exploded. Hector stopped his hand and frowned. Dedist looked at Hector and realized that in this situation, he could no longer continue to fight. After taking off the already filthy sandbag, Dedist carried the bloody sandbag and left, letting the filth and blood stains all over his body. Deeper underground, there is a place dedicated to handling corpses and taking a bath. Looking back, Hector continued to practice his throwing knife skills. After a few minutes, heavy footsteps came from the stone stairs. It was Morris. Hector, how are you preparing? Haha. I'm ready to die. My sister is pregnant. She's pregnant. Frowning, staring at Hector who was getting more and more crazy, Morris said indifferently, if you die, your pregnant sister will have no one to take care of her. The master said that if I die, he will take care of my sister. The master will definitely strangle that bastard to death. Hector grinned and looked at Morris with a crazy face. My dog's sister will find a new master, so I'm ready to die. Mad Dog, Lord Lester promised you, but not to let you die. Morris calmly assembled the magic steel spear and came to the small steel ring hanging with a thin rope. If you set out with the idea of dying underground, then I advise you not to embarrass Nightblade as soon as possible and find a place outside to commit suicide by yourself. The man focused on the tip of the spear, stabbed forward, and passed through the hole of the steel ring by a hair's breadth. Obviously, it was still a little short of the expected target. No. He threw the knife in his hand, and it hit the bullseye accurately, with a powerful metallic vibration at the tail. Before I die, many people will die. Ha. Ha 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 ha. Chapter 118 Complex Underground Environment. At daybreak, Lester, Margaret and Meredith arrived at the entrance of the mine outside the shimmering Silver Mountains. Excluding the more than 50 young and middle-aged people responsible for logistics and transportation, a mixed team of 100 people, including 10 blackguards as the vanguard, 5 Nightblade assassins as scouts, and 10 Black Rose mages as the core, equipped with some magic steel equipment, Narxus Black Iron Guards and Shadow Crossbowmen, officially entered the underground world. The blazing torches illuminated the underground space and dispelled the oppressive darkness. After the mage unlocked the entrance to the underground world blocking the entrance to the third mine, everyone's expressions began to become serious. Wrapped in the ground by rocks, no one knew what they would encounter ahead. On the rock layer, several Black Rose mages cast lighting magic to illuminate the somewhat empty cave below. The only colors were black gray and dark brown sedimentary rocks. Lester looked at the almost vertical rock wall under his feet, as if he saw the miner who called him Lord. The miner named Jared was shot dead by the crossbow of the red-skinned demon rat on the rock wall, after he asked for help. At this moment, the rock wall was clean, and not even a bone could be seen. The expected rat fesses were not seen, as if the rats never excreted. In the darkness, there were evil beasts that would eat people without leaving any bones. This underground trip was the first active counterattack against the evil beasts. Thinking that at this moment, there were nearly 200 people waiting for his orders, Lester took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Shadow crossbowmen, magic crossbow troops, alert. Morris, start setting up the rope ladder." After receiving the order, the 5 masked Nightblade assassins took the steel frame rope ladder that had been prepared long ago from their backs. After unfolding the folding steel frame, they used a hammer to drive 4 steel nails into the hard rock, and then used special cowhide ropes to drive 4 steel nails into the rock wall. The cowhide ropes were tightly connected to the steel frame. After adjusting the angle of the steel claws and fixing the ladder frame, the iron rope ladder was inserted horizontally into the steel frame through the mortise and tenon connection. The upper and lower parts were connected together in turn, gradually lengthened, and formed a semi-permanent ladder structure. There were 2 rope ladders on each rock platform, which were convenient for climbers to go up and down. Because it was made of steel as the main material, it had good pressure bearing capacity, which was enough for the blackguards wearing magic steel plate armor to go up and down safely. After the Nightblade assassin went down first, the 5 people holding the magic glowstone scattered to explore the terrain and route. Lester arranged the rest of the soldiers to go up and down in turn again and establish the first simple base on the flat ground at the bottom. More than 3 hours later, more than 200 people, including wooden stakes and other construction materials, all crossed the 20-meter high rock platform and safely reached the flat ground. No non-combat casualties occurred. "Margaret, we will set up a guard camp here. We must move step by step and gradually reduce the living space of the rats. The situation in the underground world is unclear. The enemy is in the dark, and we are in the light. We must not advance rashly. Understood?" Seeing that Margaret had already begun to arrange defense and construction matters, Lester called the handsome man Northless, who came back to report the situation first. "Tell me, what did you find?" Northless first knelt on one knee and saluted, then took out a piece of light yellow linen from his waist bag. A simple terrain route map was drawn on the linen with a black dye feather pen. Cartography, pathfinding, weapon mastery and basic assassination principles. These essential skills for killers are all specially taught and tested by Lester, and are skills that every Nightblade killer must master. This is why there are only 5 Nightblade killers until now. Sometimes cultural exams are much more difficult than other exams. "Master, please look, this is a simple map of the explored area." After handing the linen to Lester, Noddles began to explain. "We are in the center. Below us is a fault rock wall leading to the outside world. There are 2 naturally formed underground passages in the upper right and upper left positions. There is a rat tunnel with serious traces of excavation directly above. The height and size cannot allow us to pass smoothly." After a pause, Noddles guessed that Lester might have absorbed his information, so he pointed to the line on the upper left and continued. "The passage on the upper left is a bit narrow. It is about 200 meters away from here. The terrain gradually decreases. It seems to be a natural cave. In the deeper underground, Morris found stalactites and some other natural underground crystals. Except for some bite marks left by rats, no traces of any biological activities were found. At present, this passage is being further explored by Morris and Edist." Noddles pointed to the line on the right, and Lester noticed that there was a strange symbol specially marked on the linen. "Hector and Damaster are exploring this place together. According to Damaster's description, the passage on the right is wide and flat. Before the fork in the road, he found several black stone pillars with human faces standing by the wall. The stone pillars have obvious traces of artificial chiseling. This is the pattern he saw on the stone pillars. He drew it when communicating with me. Now they can only explore 1 branch road each, because of lack of manpower. Master, should we explore the passage on the left or the passage on the right first?" After a pause, Lester pointed to the rat path directly above. "Take me to see this first." There was some doubt in his eyes, but Nobles bowed his head respectfully. Yes. Any normal person walking in the dark and cramped underground world without any vitality will experience maddening depression and despair. Unless that person is not a normal person. More than 500 meters underground. Morris walked in front, his footsteps echoing in the underground cave, and the ethereal water drops dripping from the stalactites were in his ears. Surrounded by pink and light blue mica and crystals, the man felt that he was suitable to live here. If it weren't for the master's order, he had to pass on to future generations. There is no doubt that many creatures in the underground world were killed by those rats. This small claw-shaped hole is definitely not something that a big rat can dig out, nor a small rat. Shaking the magic glowstone in his hand, no longer looking at the fist-sized cave wall, the man stood up, walked to the crystal, and stared at the broken crystal. Why do these rats gnaw these crystals? Grinding teeth? Or is there another reason? What's the benefit for them to do this? Can I take advantage of this? Touching the beautiful sword-shaped blue crystal, Morris whispered. Deadest naturally wouldn't answer, let alone answer questions that he didn't know how to answer, so he stood there motionless, sensing the surrounding environment. Soon, tiny footsteps and whispers came from multiple large holes. Here they come, the mute said. Morris put his ear to the ground, closed his eyes, and opened them again in an instant. We should go. Readers who support the book, please remember to turn on the automatic subscription. It's okay to support the book, but my personal suggestion is not to skip reading, otherwise it will be difficult to understand it later. Thank you to the book friends who give Hongai recommendation votes every day. Your support is the greatest encouragement to Hongai. Chapter 119 Dragon Taming and Bloodstone Altar. When the underground war broke out, a white-faced beardless man was standing on the mountainside of the Urus Mountains with a sad face, looking at the indifferent and vigilant silver-winged dragon bird outside the cave. Standing in the mountain wind, the man felt a little sad. He missed Stanna, and didn't know whether his child had been born into the world and became the second son of the great elder Boris. This man was the beast trainer Garfield, who had been imprisoned in the dungeon of the Emerald Territory for nearly a year. Today, he was finally released, and voluntarily became the glorious beast trainer of the Emerald Territory. Unlike his companions, who were responsible for the stone-armored giant lizards and dragon lizards in the quiet forest, he was responsible for finding and researching matters related to the taming of dragon birds. Years of experience in taming livestock told him that this huge and beautiful creature in front of him was emitting uncompromising hostility towards him, as if it knew that he wanted to touch her, and was extremely intelligent. Thinking back to the only request the Lord had given him, Garfield sighed. How can I approach this dragon bad without making her angry? With this dragon bad so alert, your request is too strict. Garfield had no doubt that, if he tried to get close to the dragon bird, it would tear him apart with its huge silver claws. He could only stand there motionless, like a wooden man. Yes. With a light cry, Silver Moon no longer paid attention to the human who had a purpose for her, and flew high to find food. After Silver Moon flew away, Garfield hurriedly ran into them and made a cave built specifically for Silver Moon, and began to observe Silver Moon's living environment, trying to find the key to taming the dragon bird from the living environment. Most flying animals are sensitive enough to smell. Fortunately, the Lord has already brought me to see Silver Moon once. She shouldn't eat me alive, just because I broke into the cave. Turning over the remains of the animal's bones, the man began to sort out his thoughts. Garfield understood that, generally speaking, domesticating animals is nothing more than starting with obedience and loyalty, reproducing the next generation through artificial means, to obtain animals with more family attributes, and constantly eliminating failures, until the animals are completely domesticated by humans. In order to obtain obedience, whether through violent coercion, food temptation, or close contact all day to gain favor, it is first necessary to establish a stable superior relationship between humans and animals. Equality or inferior relationships are harmful to the domestication of animals, and even inferior relationships will only make animals treat you as their son. How can a father listen to his son in this world? Raising animals is to make them serve humans, not to raise an ancestor for yourself. Instead of working hard all day, you have to kneel down to the animals and find a father for yourself. After establishing a stable superior-subordinate relationship, you have to consider the issue of communication. The animal must understand what you are saying, so that it can understand what it can and cannot do. In short, it is to set rules. The more complex and strict the rules are, the more conducive it is to increase obedience. After obtaining a fairly high level of obedience, you need to consider how to increase loyalty. Under high obedience, the trainer can bestow favors on the domesticated animals, so that the animals will not think that this is a human son honoring his animal father, but that the human father is pampering his animal son. This is the premise of gratitude, and it is also a necessary condition for making wild beasts and animals become obedient. Those idiot trainers who want animals to be obedient, kneel down and kowtow to the animals every day, and try to influence the wild beasts with love, will get nothing, except an unhappy slave status for themselves. After successfully domesticating the first generation of animals, we need to consider how to make the first generation of animals reproduce safely and stably, and raise the second generation of animals. To establish a stable breeding farm, we need to let humans as masters forcefully insert themselves into the growth environment of the new generation during the growth of the second generation, to increase the family attribute. This is a necessary condition for domestication. Offspring that are not family friendly will be directly wiped out by humans, so that only the offspring of family friendly will survive. The right way of companionship will make the new generation have an extraordinary sense of dependence and closeness to humans from an early age. This is also an important prerequisite for animals to be used by humans when they grow up. The next step is the process of continuous reincarnation of domestication and cultivation until the hatchery and training ground can stably produce a steady stream of animal resources for humans. This is considered to be the completion of domestication. With an idea in mind, Garfield also finished his observations and determined that he could not do anything here in Yunai except obtaining some information about the life and habits of dragon birds. He could neither arrange for Yunai to lay eggs nor obtain Yunai's obedience and loyalty, so he could not start here in Yunai. Moreover, Silver Moon is a special case among dragon birds and does not have the universal characteristics of ordinary dragon birds. After walking out of the cave, Garfield found the guard soldier specially assigned to him. I want to see Lord Lester. I have some ideas on how to tame dragon birds, and I need to ask Lord Lester for his opinion. In the Silver Mountains, deep underground, in an unknown huge cave, blood diffused in the air, a faint red mist floated above the cave ceiling, and the strong smell of blood did not dissipate. At the very center of the cave, there stood a huge bloodstone altar that was deliberately carved out. The altar had 8 red horns pointing in 8 directions, and another small scarlet horn like blood jade pointed straight up to the sky. The octagonal altar exuded a corrupting evil aura. Below the 9th corner of the horn altar, surrounded by the octagonal, was a huge black stone blood basin filled with fresh blood. After the new rats drank the holy blood by sacrificing themselves, the underground creatures would be carried to the blood basin by the giant rat priests, and the bloodstone knife would be used to cut the throats of the underground creatures to bleed them, constantly replenishing the blood basin. When all the new rats drank the holy blood and their fur and pupils began to turn red, the one-horned rat priest drove away the other priest guards who showed greed for the holy blood and cleared the remaining rats from the bloodstone altar. In the blink of an eye, the densely packed altar became empty. Then, the one-horned priest sword scream, holding a bloodstone wand, slowly walked deeper into the octagonal bloodstone altar. Putting down the wand, the one-horned priest knelt respectfully outside the beautiful bloodstone door and kowtowed heavily. My lord, today's holy blood sacrifice ceremony has ended. Bloodstone tribe rat language. There was silence for more than 3/4, during which the one-horned priest did not lift his forehead off the ground, always tightly pressed against the ground, and remained silent, with a pious face. The dark red bloodstone door slowly opened, and a strong ratman with 2 large horns and a body of 3 meters walked out holding a bloodstone crown in his hands. He went straight to the bloodstone octagonal altar, and put the bloodstone crown on the 9th corner of the altar, so that the crown just fell on the bloodstone base at the 9th corner. For a moment, the blood light was bright, and the fishy smell in the air became a little stronger. Chapter 120 The Origin of Rats. In the center of the crown was an arrow-shaped runestone that flashed an ominous red light. After the crown returned to the bloodstone base, the calm blood basin began to boil. Deeper inside, in the holy room connected to the bloodstone octagonal altar, the metal ore excavated by the rats began to slowly transform into bloodstone, and the blood in the blood basin began to gradually decrease. I feel the activity of the holy stone. The horned rat king stared at the holy bloodstone on the crown and spoke in Narxan. He brings us wisdom, strength, and abundance. At this moment, he has issued a new revelation. My king, please speak, your servant listens. Without looking up, the one horned priest responded in Narxan. The second holy stone is not far from us, in the body of a human who invaded the underground. The Rat King's voice was low and majestic, and even his expression was the same as that of a human. Find that human, and obtain the second holy stone. Only then can we, humble ones, respond to his gift and gain even greater power. Only when the bloodstone gate closed again did the unicorn priest stand up from the ground and slowly leave the sacred altar. Outside the altar, seeing the high priest coming out of the altar, the Ratman priest hurried to greet him. Master priest, what instructions does the Rat King have? The two waves of attacks launched by the Ratman were eventually blocked by the soldiers of the Emerald Territory. After the tension, the surviving warriors cheered a few times. Before the boiling blood state, the Narxan Black Guards evacuated the battlefield in advance to ensure that their sanity was not completely lost. In the open terrain, even with the simple defense facilities set up in advance as a buffer, the soldiers of the Emerald Territory still suffered a lot of casualties. At least in Lester's opinion, he had more than a dozen casualties despite being well prepared, which was already a big failure. But think about it the other way around. Valoran is different from the previous life. The modern army in the previous life relied on advanced automated weapons and military command systems, and emphasized zero combat losses and high lethality. After all, this place is still in the era of cold weapons. Even Piltover, who invented the Hextech gun, has not yet been born, and gunpowder weapons have not appeared. It is difficult to avoid casualties in a chaotic battle with swords alone. In addition, the magic steel crossbow itself has the magic breaking property, so that the accompanying mages also lose the effect of using magic defense attacks. Life and death depend on the soldier's instinctive reaction and luck. Thinking of this, Lester was a little relieved, but his heart was still a little more gloomy about the endless red-skinned demon rats. The enemy is dark, and I'm bright, which is not a happy thing. Let's set up a defensive base here, and the exploration action will continue after it stabilizes here. Ordering the mage to block the other two passages outside the rat hole with magic and place magic guards, Lester and Meredith walked out of the mine, and Margaret would be fully responsible for the defense of the underground base, and could not leave in a short time. Fortunately, Lester was absolutely assured of Margaret. This war will take a long time to end. Judging from the few encounters, these red-skinned rats don't care about their own casualties. Ms. Meredith, do you know what this means? Noticing the man's heavy tone, Meredith whispered. Does it mean that the underground world is bigger than we imagined? Lester nodded in appreciation and looked at the bright moon in the sky. The premise of reproduction is a stable and sufficient supply of food and housing. The underground biome under the Silver Mountains must be very complex. As the overlord of it, red-skinned rats can obtain sufficient food resources by plundering other creatures, which allows female rats to give birth to offspring unscrupulously and provide a steady stream of soldiers for the rats. Perhaps the rats that attack us every time are just the product of their overpopulation. This is outrageous, right? Nodding, the female mage agreed. Logically, there shouldn't be this group of mutated rats. What went wrong? Trying hard to recall the relevant information about the Nokmachi plains in the previous life game, Lester suddenly found that, apart from the heroes, some equipment, or scattered background stories and historical events, he still knew nothing about many things in Rune Continent. That's why she, who likes to explore background stories, often tells herself some interesting stories. Otherwise she would be even more ignorant now. It seems that in the future, Narxus wants to bribe Nokmachi to invade Demacia. At that time, the country of Nokmachi will become more desolate, and there will even be homeless people who can't eat. Putting aside the problems of the rulers themselves, land degradation is likely to be an important factor. At present, it seems that the Nokmachi plains is quite rich. Could the land becoming barren be related to the sudden appearance of rats underground? How did the kingdom of Nokmachi deal with the rats underground at that time? After a moment of silence, Lester's emotions were a bit complicated. Obviously, the natives of Mombia who created the country of Nekomachi would not do better than himself, an outsider from the civilized era. So we can only guess that the decision makers of the kingdom of Nekomachi chose to avoid the underground creatures of the Silver Mountains, and the underground creatures also followed a certain rule and did not expand to the surface. At this moment, this balance was broken by himself. However, he did not regret it, because he obtained the mountain copper. Any kind of power that can make the Emerald Territory stronger or that can be controlled by himself must be grasped in his hands as much as possible. This is his ultimate goal in Rune Continent. Whether it is the Darkin, the Protoss, the Underworld, or the Void, he has his own pride. He will not let himself succumb to any powerful force again, and naturally needs a force to compete with it. Since the Yodel people can live forever, Lysandra who trades with the Void can survive for 1,000 years, and even LeBlanc can use forbidden black magic to achieve immortality, then why don't I try to find a way to prolong my life, escape the shackles of time, and see the future world with my own eyes? Not knowing that the man was more determined to pursue his ambitions, the sorceress thought for a moment and cautiously probed. I wonder if Lord Lester has ever heard of the World Rune? Lester secretly laughed in his heart, knowing what the World Rune was. When he played the game before, he would choose the rune himself every time, after selecting a hero. Wait, the World Rune? This kind of power, to change the world is enough to change the land form and life form, right? Lester's face suddenly changed, and he turned around, and looked at Meredith seriously, which scared the sorceress instead. You mean, the thing that affects the underground rats is a World Rune? Chapter 121 Poro of Frostgard Fortress. Ah, yes, that's right, but this is also my own guess. Originally, Meredith wanted to test Lester, whether he knew that there might be world runes in his body, but he didn't expect that by mistake, the topic would be deviated to another side. Speculations about the origin of the underground Radman. In this way, many things can be explained. Speaking of world runes, Lester thought of a lonely wandering wizard, a bald purple potato spirit who could walk with a scroll on his back, a rune suppressor who didn't recognize his relatives. If someone on Rune Continent has the heaviest and greatest mission, Riz is definitely the most outstanding one. As a tragic world guardian, Riz has been maintaining world peace in his own way, especially after coming to Valoran. Through the information scroll provided by Rose, Lester understood the significance of Riz's behavior. If Lester wanted to give Riz a definition himself, that person could be called the savior of all humans on Rune Continent. Before this era, Valoran was also prosperous, and there were also powerful countries and forces as numerous as stars. Even during the more than 300 years of Mordekaiser's rule, blood sacrifices and massacres were everywhere, but the population at that time was not as depressed as it is now. A force could still have thousands or tens of thousands of people, otherwise Uzel, who had committed too many sins, would not have become the lingering Mordekaiser of the underworld after his death. Then, the Rune War, which lasted less than 30 years, began. Countless lives were buried in this huge disaster. 30 years later, fighting a war in this era was as ridiculous as fighting at the entrance of a village, and it made me, a newcomer, easily defeat the bandit group and barbarian tribe that the Lokshi tribe regarded as a major threat, and became a hero of Naxos. If it were placed in a more distant era, I really might not be able to do it. After all, I was just a killer, not a general. Relying on past experience, commanding a few hundred people was already the limit, and I couldn't command a large-scale war of thousands of people. The landform has changed drastically, the civilization has collapsed, the population is sparse, but the technology for smelting weapons is very advanced. What does this mean? This shows that humans, who had once been glorious, have suffered an irresistible catastrophe. Now it has only been less than 30 years since the world runes appeared from all over the world. In the past 30 years, the population of the Rune Continent has shrunk to the point of being almost extinct. It is obvious how dangerous the world runes are. By analogy, the current Valoran continent is a wasteland world after a nuclear war. The only difference is that magic runes will not produce radiations equally that are difficult to eliminate like nuclear weapons. This is also the opportunity for the Valoran continent to begin its revival at this moment. After all, humans are like leeks. As long as the roots are left, they will grow again after being cut. However, if the world rune really exists under the shimmering silver mountains, should I give it to Riz? Although it is not bad to let the spirited purple potato be a tool for exterminating rats. Sensing the fleeting greed in his heart, Lester took a deep breath and instructed Meredith. You can't tell anyone about this guess except Rose, understand? Understood. Turning back, Lester continued to move forward and got on the modified carriage. Faintly, Lester saw the scene where the Wandering Wizard used runes to imprison him. Riz knew that he would be dead after obtaining the rune, right? Fortunately, the rune is still deep underground, so he doesn't have to worry about his safety after encountering Riz. Lonely World Guardian, where are you now? Not knowing that he had been talked about by a big shot of a human force, Riz on the snowfield sneezed, rubbed his purple nose, and continued to move north towards the sky that was about to brighten. It's not a good idea to use the rune scroll to hold the world rune. The power of the rune will become stronger and stronger. There will always be a day when the rune scroll can no longer bear it. I have to think of a new way. At least I have to put the rune fragments in the scroll in a safer place and leave some empty space. Stepping into the thick snow, the magic vibration under my feet suddenly stopped, and my feet instantly sank into the knee-deep snow. The hooded wizard suddenly restrained the magic cyclone lingering on his head, took off the hood, let the snowflakes fall on his big bald head, stopped where he was and smiled kindly because he saw a group of cute creatures living in the north on the snow in the distance, and he didn't want to scare them and let them run away. Big round eyes, furry body like a dumpling, a thick pink tongue licking his cheeks and beard from time to time, two small tentacles that bend downward will stand up when frightened, and two small feet hopping on the snow. This little creature is timid but naughty, and is a rare warm creature on the cold and ruthless icefield. It is said that there are heart patterns of different shapes on the abdomen of Poro, and it is not known whether it is true or not. Riz smiled happily, staring at the little Porus standing in the distance, and staring at him blankly, knowing that he was about to reach the destination of this trip. These little guys are strange creatures that can only be seen near the Frost-Girded Fortress in the north. In the north, the Freljord people call them Porus, and their origin is unknown. Some people say that such little guys come from the bottomless abyss, but no one has evidence. It is said that the frost guards of the Frost-Girded Fortress, under the order of a great being, announced and implemented the rule that Porus cannot be harmed. Anyone caught by the frost guards who harmed Porus would be immediately executed. It was horrible to watch. Riz did not want to test how powerful the frost guards were, nor did he want to harm or scare cute little guys like Porus. He came here to meet the legendary Ice Queen, not to go to war with the frost gods. Little guy, leave here. I wish you happiness and happiness every day. Chirp chirp as if they understood the blessing of the Wandering Wizard. The tentacles of the three little Porus drooped on both sides of their heads again, stuck out their tongues, and nodded at the man, then jumped and turned away. Riz was very satisfied. He knew that his cautious behavior did not scare these cute elves in the north, which made his depressed mood a little relieved. Soon, after bypassing a snowy mountain again, facing the midday sun, Riz saw the huge ice blue black stone fortress hidden behind the snowy mountain. It took nearly a year for Riz to finally cross the barren tundra and reach the Frost-Girded Fortress. This is the far north of Valoran, a great man-made creation that existed since ancient times. No, maybe it was created by God. Taking a deep breath, Riz put on his hood again and disappeared in the vast snow. Chapter 122 The Ice Queen and the Wandering Wizard. Located in a deep blue square ice pillar, Blackstone Fortress, like its cold and hard fortress walls, rules all Freljord villages and tribes in the north with chains and ruthlessness. Here, all living things must unconditionally submit to the Ice Queen. The Frost Grid is the most powerful scepter of the Ice Queen, and true ice is the highest reward of the Ice Queen to the tribes that obey her. True ice means power, and power means survival. No one knows how true ice is made by the Ice Queen, but the Freljord people who submit to the Ice Queen understand that only the Iceborn who obtain true ice can fight for a place to breathe in this barren wasteland. within a radius of 100 miles. Even the ferocious bear people who believe in ancient gods will stay away from this fortress, where everything is frozen, as if there is really something terrible in the fortress, which also makes the tribes living around the frost-girded fortress worship the Ice Queen even more. In their view, only the Ice Queen can bring strong hope to Freljord, so they are willing to obey the Ice Queen's rule, and are willing to send the Iceborn girls in their tribe to the frost-girded fortress, to serve the Ice Queen, and learn frost magic from the Ice Queen, even if their warm and lovely daughters will become cold and ruthless Iceborn sorceresses after returning. Correspondingly, the Ice Queen will also send her Iceborn sorceresses to various parts of her territory, to maintain the majesty and rule of the Ice Queen. By the way, it is also a matter of course, to expel some trolls or bears. As for the powerful tribes that are unwilling to obey the rule of the Ice Queen, such as the Winterclaw tribe or the Avarosa tribe in the south, they will naturally not receive any support from the Ice Queen. Of course, they don't have to send girls with Iceborn blood to the frost-girded fortress. Self-reliance is their only choice. In the Freljord Icefield, where power is supreme, the Ice Queen is the most powerful ruler, without a doubt. Although he understood the above information, collected from the people of Freljord, it was not until he was escorted by the tough Frostgirded to the Frostgirded fortress that Riz personally experienced what it meant to be overbearing. Fortunately, Riz himself was not a bad-tempered person, and the Frostgirded in leather armor did not intend to take away the scroll leather bag. The obedient wandering mage allowed the two to escort him into the towering gate of the Frostgirded fortress, and through the fortress corridor. Finally, under the escort of the guards, Riz arrived at the residence of the Ice Queen, the Eternal Ice Palace. The dark blue ice crystal palace exuded a breathtaking coldness. Even Riz himself felt a little chill in this place that was enough to freeze the air. Fortunately, he was temporarily sure that there was nothing he wanted to find here, so there was no need to consider the issue of going to war with the Ice Queen. Then, he saw the Ice Queen sitting on the ice throne, wearing a dark blue gorgeous robe and an ice blue crystal mask. On both sides behind the Ice Queen, there were two Iceborn female sorcerers wearing magic cloaks and holding true ice staffs. You retreat. The voice of the Ice Queen was majestic and ruthless. Just by the voice, without looking at her curvy body, Riz couldn't even find a trace of a human in front of him that belonged to a human woman. This voice was like a piece of blue ice that had not melted for thousands of years. This woman who had lived for who knows how long was beautiful and deadly. Yes. The two frost guards who let go of Riz's arm knelt on one knee and saluted, then stood up and bent their waists, facing the queen, and slowly moved backwards until they reached the gate of the ice palace. The two guards straightened up completely and turned to leave through the side door. The Iceborn sorceress guarding the gate of the ice palace raised her staff, and the 5-meter high ice door slowly closed, which made Riz, who turned his head back, have a few more bitter smiles on his face. After the frost guards left, the Ice Queen waved her hand, signaling the Iceborn sorceress guarding the ice palace to leave through the side door as well. In addition to the queen, only guests of high status have the right to walk through the main gate. Riz, who just realized this, observed everything in front of him and seemed to understand why the Ice Queen valued him so much, but allowed the two frost guards to invite him in such an offensive way. This might be some kind of warning. Soon, only the complicated looking wizard and the queen on the throne were left in the ice palace. After a few seconds of silence, the Ice Queen's voice was vague and indifferent. The civilization of Helia has disappeared in the long river of history. The Blessed Isles have now become the Shadow Isles, the cradle of evil spirits. It was you who spread the news of the world rune all over the world, and the world was traumatized by it. Countless people died wailing, and shadows laughed wildly in the dark. I call you the sinners of the world, and I believe you are not qualified to deny it. Master Tiris's apprentice. Master Riz, I have heard about you and know what you have been looking for. I can tell you that I don't have what you are looking for here. The Great Iceborn does not need shining stones to help us overcome the harsh environment of Freljord. The true ice of the north is enough to cope with all difficulties. I can allow you to walk on this land, but I will never allow you to cause any large-scale riots and kill lives wantonly. This is my promise to you, and the bottom line you must remember. If you exceed the bottom line, you will become the enemy of Freljord, and this cold land will never stop fighting you. Knowing that the Rune War is inseparable from the secret society he participated in, Riz smiled bitterly and said, I'm not a bloodthirsty person, and killing is not my original intention. Please rest assured, Queen. Regarding that matter, although it was contrary to our original intention, it was indeed, because of our negligence, that the news was leaked, causing such a great trauma to the world. I and several other mages are deeply sorry for this. Death is not a pity, but mistakes must be borne by the living. This is my only wish for living. Riz bowed slightly, and said the last sentence. Excuse me, Ice Queen. Mage Riz, I won't see you off. Straightening up, the mage turned around, and left without hesitation. The queen raised her hand, and the ice gate opened again. Riz's body paused, but he still walked towards the side door, and left directly from the side door. The empty ice door closed again. With a sigh, the Ice Queen stood up, and stared at the empty and cold ice palace. The queen took off the crystal mask on her face, revealing a beautiful and delicate face that was as beautiful as ice. The only flaw was that the woman's eyes were covered by a dark blue silk eye mask, so people couldn't see what kind of stunning eyes were under the silk eye mask. The woman sighed softly, and her voice was no longer as low and majestic as before, but became ethereal and pure, like the purest girl. Will the world usher in its end? Who can know what I'm carrying? Looking down at her feet, the queen silently put on the mask again, as if facing the abyss. Weakness will only make persistence worthless. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123 The Return of the Soldier King. The harvest season of autumn has officially arrived. The War Workshop has successfully developed a crossbow that can shoot multiple tendon ropes, and the capture operation is ready. In the evening, on a snowy peak somewhere in the Urus Mountains, a female dragon bird flapped its wings and flew back to its nest, but she didn't know that what she had to face was a string of hard tendon ropes that bound important parts of her body. The shadow crossbowman, who had planned in advance, quickly tied a slipknot on the tendon ropes wrapped around the dragon bird, and tied the female dragon bird with a wingspan of 6 meters into a dumpling. The female dragon bird kept struggling in the wailing sound, and seemed a little crazy, but it was a pity that everything was in vain. The deliberately designed tendon ropes could not be easily broken free. The sad female beast was pressed to the ground by everyone, and lost most of her strength. Garfield nodded with satisfaction, touched the 2 dragon bird eggs placed on the hemp, and spoke to the man beside him with a respectful look. My lord, next, as long as we transform this place and provide sufficient food every day, I can tame this dragon bird, but I'm afraid there is still a male. Is the male also captured for you? That's not necessary. After all, there are already dragon bird eggs. As long as the female beast can hatch, I'm afraid. Lester waved his hand and said lightly, safety is not something you need to consider. I will provide the materials. You just need to do your own thing and let me see your progress. Please rest assured, I will never let you down. Lester walked out of the dragon bird's nest and arranged the construction of the hatching nest. Then he found the silver-winged dragon bird waiting outside the cave. The silver-winged dragon bird, with its tail hanging down to the ground, was now folding its wings and making a low whimpering sound facing the sunset. Woo woo woo, woo woo woo. Noticing that Yanu's voice was very sad, Lester couldn't help but feel a little more guilty. Coming to Yanu's side, the man hugged the dragon bird's drooping head, and the dragon bird bent down obediently. Yanu had never rejected him, and Lester always understood this. It was his order that made Yanu betray her own people and become a traitor in the tribe. He had not been close to Yanu for a long time, even during Yanu's mating season. After returning, he had been busy with various things. He had accidentally neglected Yanu. Yanu, who was sensible, rarely bothered him. She just waited alone outside the nest, often looking down at the mountain and looking forward to him, or wandering above the clouds, silently watching him and wailing with longing. Even if it was a cold stone, it would warm up if it was put in the heart. He was not a heartless person, so how could he not understand that Yenyu really regarded him as a spouse and gave her true heart? Yenyu could do this for him, so how could he turn a blind eye? What's more, in Rune Continent, the differences between races are not impossible to erase. Nidalee can change from a human to a leopard, and Beloe can become a four-legged club-roe deer, so Yenyu can definitely change from a dragon bad to a human. The key is where to find the shape-shifting magic, and whether Silver Moon can learn magic herself. Maybe there will be clues in the Black Rose Academy. You can ask Rose about this. With a cautious look, Lester comforted Silver Moon for a long time, and Silver Moon walked out of the cage of sorrow and calmed down. Let's go, I'll accompany you tonight. Whoa 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 whoa, yes, the unexpected surprise made the huge dragon bird happy. Lester smiled, rode on Silver Moon's neck, and hugged her. Silly girl, don't be so naive, it's obviously me who owes you. Demacia, the southern foot of the Urus Mountains. A young man with a big bag on his back was walking slowly up the mountain road, often greeting the villagers passing by. Kraken, who took off his steel swordsman suit, once again became a strong and sunny young man, but compared to the youth and enthusiasm before going down the mountain, the young man who had served for more than a year became much more restrained and calm. Perhaps it was because of the young steel swordsman's status as the chief swordsman, or because of the boy's heavy aura. The villagers of Mithril Village who came and went had more respect and admiration than before. Knowing that he was different from before, Kraken accepted this. In this rare period of peace, he asked for a week's vacation, just to go home and see, and by the way, to see how the girl he liked was doing. Melia, will she be afraid of me like other people? Kraken, who had his own pride and fear in his heart, decided that if the girl alienated him, he would completely bury this immature relationship and devote himself to the military career. He was the sharpest and toughest steel sword in Demacia. He would never allow himself to have any stains. Naturally, he would not be so humble as to pursue a girl who didn't like him, although he always felt that the girl also liked him. It was just because of the girl's ambiguous attitude that made him a little unsure. Brother Kraken, you're back. On the hillside, a young man holding a dogtail grass accidentally saw Kraken walking down the mountain road. His face lit up, and he went straight to meet him. Chris, it seems that you have been exercising a lot this year. Lightly hitting his cousin's chest, Kraken felt his cousin's unchanged enthusiasm, and couldn't help but feel happy, opened his arms, and gave his cousin a big hug. I want to join the Steel Swordsman Corps like Brother Kraken. Brother Kraken, you are the great hero of our Mithril Village. Which beautiful girl doesn't want to be your wife? I want to too, brother. Just tell me if you want it or not. Go to hell. I think you want a beautiful girl to be your wife. Hahaha, am I so easy to guess? The two young men walked together with their arms around each other, and soon Kraken became a little absent-minded. Chris, you said that all the girls in the village like me, so do you think that Miria, does she like me too? After hesitating for a moment, Chris forgot the wishes of the chieftain when he thought of the girl's sad face. Screw you, chieftain of the Hilda family, you are not my biological father, why should I listen to you? After greeting his eldest brother's father affectionately in his heart, Chris smiled. Yes, Sister Miria likes you the most. Not to mention that she baked bread for you before dawn before you left. After you left, Sister Miria often went to the cliff where you exercised to look at you some time ago. I said I couldn't see you anymore, but Sister Miria said she could see you. Whether you believe it or not, I don't believe it anyway. Listening to the expression of Miria's nagging about how good he was to him, Kraken felt happier than praising himself, but Kraken soon realized that something was wrong. Sister Nalia has seldom gone out recently. What happened? I don't know. I asked Sister Nalia, but she refused to tell me. She looked like she was worried about something. With a little more haze in his heart, Kraken returned to the Mithril Village after a year. Chapter 124. I came back like a Superman, but you got married. Miria was very sad. She sat in front of the mirror, staring blankly at the beautiful girl in the mirror, but she thought of another face. That face was not good looking. At most it could be called a regular appearance, with frowned eyebrows, but there was a sense of silly seriousness. The owner of the face was very hard working. No matter what he did, he always liked to go all out, and never cheated. With hard work, the owner of the face won the recognition of the villagers with his own behavior, not because of his noble status. Honest and simple growth into reliability and perseverance, the burning fire began to attract the attention of butterflies, including girls of equal status. The moth flapped its wings and wanted to approach, but was stopped by the lampshade. When the moth came to its senses, it had lost the chance to break the lampshade and destroy itself. Now, the desperate moth has lost its last freedom. Moths are just moths after all. The girl sighed and stood up from the wooden chair. My father hadn't urged me for such a long time, so I guess he was very sad and wanted to give me more time. But this was not a problem that could be solved by more time, and it was meaningless to delay. She couldn't choose her beloved, at least at this moment. She didn't want to embarrass her father. The girl made herself smile. Maybe if she smiled more, she would really be able to laugh. Colin stood up ashamedly, looked at his daughter who walked out of the room with a smile on her face, moved his mouth twice, as if he wanted to ask something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. Dad, I'm ready, you don't have to worry about me. The girl went forward and hugged the somewhat humble man, looking at his grey temples, and said softly, the Costa family is also one of the best families in Mithril Village. Although Jobnut has a lame leg, he is also very outstanding. My daughter will definitely be very happy. Nalia. The man patted the girl on the back, his face full of regret, and finally couldn't help but spoke. In fact, I have been lying to you all along, Nalia. Your mother did not abandon us, but wanted us to go to Naxos with her. She is a terrible black mage. I only realized this after I had you. The sad man said slowly. Perhaps I should take you and your mother to Naxos instead of coming to Demacia. Perhaps if I did this, all this would not have happened at all, and you would not be forced to accept an unwilling marriage because of the identity of an exile's daughter. Otherwise, I will take you to escape. Let's go find your mother. Tonight I will find an old groom to take us away from Demacia. No, Dad, you have done enough for me. I don't want to say anything more about your choice. I'm just tired of being a stranger. The girl let go of the man, but her tone became firm. It took us a few years to integrate here. If we continue to drift and go to Naxos, how many years will it take to integrate there? After a pause, the girl's tone softened a lot, and she comforted her father in turn. Brother Kraken is very good, but he and I are not suitable. Lord Gaelister would not agree that a wizard and his only son should be together. Brother Kraken joined the army and became a great hero, so we are even less suitable. Demacia is a place that hates magic. This is an unchangeable fact. Since it cannot be changed, and we have embarked on this path, we can only accept it. From now on, I will forget that I have a magical talent. Dad, you should also forget your choice. None of us is wrong. Watching his daughter leave, the man covered his face with his sleeves and kept sobbing. The man knew that his daughter, who was laughing, was crying more miserably than he was. In a country villa in Mithril Village, Gaelister, under the shade of a tree, patted his son's shoulder with satisfaction, and his big beard curled up. You little brat has grown a lot taller. He really made your father proud. He actually became the first swordsman of the Steel Swordsman Corps. You don't know that the threshold of our family has been trampled down halfway because of this. Those who come to me for marriage can be excluded from the Mithril Village. Father, please don't joke with me. Kraken smiled bitterly and took 2 slaps from his father. He only felt his shoulders were sore and numb. He couldn't help but secretly slandered. No wonder his father could become the patriarch of the Hilda family. With this strength, who can withstand 2 punches? How can this be a joke? I tell you, you are almost at the age to get married. I have shown you a few good girls in the village. See if you like them. I will propose marriage to you. Father, forget it. You know I don't like them. Kraken shook his head. He regretted going home first. If he had known that he was being urged to get married, he might as well go to see his sister Neria first to confirm her feelings. If he has to urge her, he should urge her sister Neria. Naturally, he knew what his silly son was thinking. Gaelister's smile faded, and he suddenly sighed. Don't worry about your sister Nalia. Her father has accepted Jobnut's proposal. Nalia, is going to marry Jobnut, that lame cripple. Gaelister's face was a little ugly. Although he knew that his son really liked the daughter of the Narkson Black Wizard, he didn't know that he would like her to the point of losing his soul. The most important thing was that he didn't usually see such a dull boy being so infatuated. If you want to climb up to the upper class of Demacia, you can't have anything to do with magic. Alas, Kraken, after tonight, you will understand my painstaking efforts. Kraken could no longer hear the words of comfort that Gale Lister said later. The swordsman who could chop off the head of a frail-jawed bandit with a mithril steel sword without changing his expression left his home in a daze and walked in the unfamiliar streets in a daze. He couldn't hear anything, couldn't see anything, and his head was buzzing like a mess. The real heart-wrenching pain was 100 times more painful than the cold blade of the frail-jawed piercing into the body. It was not until he confirmed that Neriah would become someone else's wife that the boy understood what the girl who always appeared in his mind when he was the most lonely meant to him. He was an honest man. He would not lie. He only knew how to work hard. He had never liked anyone else. He was very sure of this, but Neriah was an exception. To him, Neriah was half of his life. And now, half of his life was gone. The immature feelings began to sprout from the seeds, but were taken away by others when they were about to blossom and bear fruit. The strong boy walked forward with tears in his eyes, and when he came to his senses, he found that he had unknowingly come to the cliff where he grew up. The boy also saw the familiar back of the man kneeling on his knees on the edge of the cliff, praying. Neriah, the monthly ticket activity is over. According to the rules, 2 more chapters will be added at noon. Chapter 125 The Incompatible Angel Sisters. Brother Kraken, Neriah is very sorry. Neriah can't continue to pray for you, nor can she bake bread and make jerky for you. Neriah has broken her oath and can no longer accompany Brother Kraken for the rest of his life. Lord Gallister will not allow Black Wizard's daughter with magical blood to become the wife of his only son, not to mention that the Black Wizard is an oxen. Victory or defeat, Neriah doesn't understand these things. Neriah only hopes that Brother Kraken can return home safely from the battlefield without any harm or encountering any unhappy things. After today, Neriah will become Job Knight's wife. Although Neriah doesn't like him and only likes Brother Kraken, Neriah will also fulfill her obligations as a wife. Therefore, Neriah apologizes to you, Brother Kraken. Please forget me. Woo woo woo. Forget me. Woo woo woo. The girl lay on the ground crying, and she didn't even notice that there was a stupid stick standing behind her. Kraken stood silently behind the girl, listening to her worries. At this moment, he finally understood that he was indeed a fool. A wooden fool. A big fool. No, he was worse than a fool. Even a fool was not as stupid as himself. It was obviously his father who was obstructing the relationship between him and Neriah. It was obvious that Neriah liked him so much. It was obvious that Neriah seemed to be quite excited when talking about magic, but she was often worried about magic. Why couldn't he, this blockhead, come to his senses? Why couldn't he be more proactive? Why couldn't he be more responsible as a man? He didn't even know that his woman was bullied. If he wasn't an idiot, what was he? If he couldn't even protect his own woman, how would others look at the swordsman of the Steel Swordsman Corps? A joke. Father, I will use my actions to tell you that the upper class power in Demacia is gained by swords, by military exploits, by killing the enemy's heads in fear. The superior status is built on rivers of blood and battlefields strewn with corpses, not by marrying a woman of equal status, or by pleasing a leader who hates magic. Military merit will not be erased just because I marry the daughter of a black wizard. In other words, if my achievements are really erased just because I marry a female wizard, then the Demacia I fought for is nothing but a joke. It doesn't matter if I don't become such a swordsman leader. At worst, I can go to Noxus. There is always a place for me in this big world, but my heart will only belong to one woman. The girl stood up blankly, wiped her blurry eyes, listened to the familiar yet unfamiliar voice. Her heart trembled, and she stared at the boy with mixed emotions, afraid that the person in front of her was a hallucination. Kraken, brother? You heard everything? Taking a step forward, and looking at the trembling body of the girl, Kraken gently hugged his favorite little cat. The boy turned into a man at this moment, and understood his responsibility. Nalia, I want to marry you, even if my father disagrees. It doesn't matter if it's the Coaster family, Jobnut, or your father. Whoever disagrees today, I will break his legs. I mean what I say. At worst, brother will take you to Naxos to live. I'm here. Let's see who dares to bully you. An unprecedented sense of security emerged in her heart. The girl's confusion and sadness suddenly dissipated at this moment. Nalia found her own support. I'll listen to you, Brother Kraken. Let's go find my father first, and then find your father, to see if they agree. Yeah. I didn't know that there were brothers and sisters who finally got married in the west of the continent, and a farce of a soldier king returning, and 100,000 soldiers and generals brushing orders for his sister-in-law, to boost sales was about to be staged. Lester, who had just appeased Yanu not long ago, was now worried about how to deal with the two girls who were beginning to have antagonistic emotions. His left hand was tightly imprisoned by Zina, and his right hand was firmly held by Mishap. Lester was a little amused. This was not a simple problem of controlling for 2.5 seconds. The cause of the incident was that he was going to inspect the development of the territory and go to the war workshop to get the magic steel mask made by the old blacksmith. Just for this little thing, Miss had deliberately sent her sister away and whispered that she wanted to follow her, saying that she wanted to learn and observe the laws and development of the Emerald Territory. She was pestered so tightly that he finally agreed to mishap, but was pulled by Hina again after hearing the details and insisted to follow. Let her follow. Lester had no choice. The most important thing was that Mishap's face changed and she didn't allow him to take Hina with her, which made the black-haired girl very uncomfortable. Her cute big eyes were instantly filled with tears of grievance. Then the two little guys started to make a fuss. Lester looked to the left. Why don't you let me go? Why can you go, but I can't? Hina held back her tears and stared at her sister angrily, as if she was staring at a class enemy. Lester looked to the right. This is an adult matter. Why are you, a little kid, following him? Are you going to play with him? Brother Lester is going to work, not to play with you. When you go out, don't you always pester Brother Lester so that he can't concentrate on his work? Holding the man's hand, Mishap puffed out her chest with confidence. I can help my brother deal with things when I go. What else can you do besides causing trouble? Lester looked to the left again. You are talking nonsense. I didn't cause trouble to Brother Lester. Sister, you just want to be alone with Brother Lester. You don't like Brother Lester. Why are you pestering Brother Lester? You big liar. Woo woo woo. Provoked by her sister, Mishap also glared and suddenly changed the topic to Lester, who had some problems with his cervical spine. Brother Lester, tell me, did Hina cause you trouble? Hina looked at the man aggrievedly, which made the man feel a headache. Although it was expected, it was confirmed that the two sisters were born incompatible. Was he too hasty to recruit the Angel sisters at the same time? Would he end up like Karam's father-in-law one day? After thinking about it, the man who didn't want to die decided to use his trump card. Ahem. If I talk about causing trouble, the quarrel between you two little guys is the biggest trouble for me. Lester said softly, forcibly holding the two pouting little guys on his legs. I know you like to spend time with me and are willing to be close to me, but I'm really busy and can't be with you all the time. I understand Mishap's desire to help, and I understand Hina's desire to accompany you, but you are still young and don't understand many things. Sometimes you will cause misunderstandings because of saying the wrong thing. In fact, you two sisters are the closest, much closer than me. Observing the panic and shy expressions of the two little girls, Lester smiled. Come on, give each other a hug and stop quarreling. I'll take you out for a delicious meal. After hesitating for a while, the two sisters hugged each other. Then, Lester hugged the two sisters with blushing cheeks and kissed them on the forehead. The man stood up. Promise me, you won't quarrel. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.